Chapter 1083. As they were about to part, Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su stood in the courtyard to talk. If there's anything, you can ask Jasper to contact Water Spirit. I'll ask her to keep an eye on your situation. Xiao Su looked at her and said seriously. Chu Qingyan found it funny. She took his hand and joked, "Big Ice Cube, I'm going to fast, not to fight a war. You've already told me so many things since last night. It's been a long time since you've left me for so long." Xiao Su's calm statement of facts succeeded in making Chu Qingyan quiet down and listen attentively. "Okay, please continue. This little one is listening." Xiao Su was interrupted by her mischievous spirit and couldn't help but be amused. He smiled helplessly and finally reached out to rub her head. He said dotingly, "I can't accompany you this time. Be careful." After saying that, he pulled her into his arms and tightened his arms. Although he didn't say anything, his body language constantly conveyed his reluctance to part. She originally wanted to say a few words to dilute the sad atmosphere between them. But for some reason, when the light ink fragrance of the big ice cube lingered at the tip of her nose, she couldn't help but want to indulge in this clean and warm embrace forever. "Big Ice Cube, I really can't bear to part with you." It wasn't because she was pretentious, but because it was difficult for them to move forward in the capital. No matter what you did, there were countless eyes watching you. For example, with this matter of fasting, how many people were looking at you as a joke? But because of this powerful society, if you were one rank lower than the officials, you were inferior to them. You had to obey the orders from above. Chu Qingyan felt that this wasn't a place where people could cry and laugh as they wanted. In the future, she could expect that it would be an abyss of suffering for a period of time. The little fellow's words caused Xiao Su's heart to soften. He lowered his head and kissed her. It wasn't as domineering and direct as before, but extremely lingering. It made people unable to stop and was filled with reluctance. In the end, she tightly hugged his waist and made a decision. Since she had decided to come to the capital, she shouldn't always stay in the Wangfu. She had to act when she needed to. As long as she protected herself and didn't cause trouble for the big ice cube. Those who wanted to cause trouble, she would beat them up one by one. "Big Ice Cube, I will take care of myself, don't worry," she said seriously. "All right, I will have Huang Yi to prepare your favorite food and wait for your return." Even though he was reluctant, Xiao Su couldn't keep her company at this time. So he said in a low voice to keep her company to her. In the corner of the long corridor, Huang Yi to keep her eyes on to the two embracing each other in the courtyard. Even though she was unwilling to leave, but she had to make use of the chance to use this time to make the best use this time to make use this chance while the Wang Fei was not in the Fu. Thinking to do so make use of. Before sending her off, Xiao had emphasized that if someone bullied her, she had to pay back an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. After getting on the carriage, Chu Qingyan said to Xining and Jasper in amusement, "I didn't think much of it at first, but hearing them say it now, I feel like I'm going to a dragon's lair or a tiger's den." Xining couldn't help but laugh. "This description is too scary, but everyone is worried about Mistress." She nodded and then ordered, "When we go to the National Temple this time, we will be low-key. We won't get into conflict with people and won't cause trouble, understood?" Jasper and Xining both acknowledged. This time, they were gathering at the palace gates. Because the big ice cube needed to go to the military camp to train the new soldiers, he couldn't come with her. But she didn't think that this would become a topic of criticism. Who said that His Highness Prince Ing had been hiding his fiancée in the prince's mansion, and treasuring her so much? Why did he let her go out alone and didn't even send her off? When they arrived at the palace gates, there were already many carriages waiting there. When they saw Chu Qingyan's carriage, they started to whisper. Some of them wanted to embarrass Chu Qingyan, so they didn't control their volume. Inside the carriage, Xining couldn't sit still. She wanted to rush out and reason with them, but she was stopped by her master. "Mistress, they're going too far." Xining's eyes were red with anger. Chu Qingyan was unmoved. "Did you forget what I told them before we left? Didn't they use words to provoke us so that we would fly into a rage out of humiliation? We couldn't control ourselves from the start. When we enter the National Temple in the future, won't we be so angry that we'll vomit blood?" She knew that Xining and Jasper were inexperienced girls. They couldn't stand these women who cultivated in the inner residence all day long. It was normal for them to lose their cool and be angered. Then are we going to let them bully us like this? Xining was a little unwilling. Jasper said, Xining, listen to mistress first. Don't be rash. Chu Qingyan laughed. You've been with me for so long. Do you think that I'm someone who will be taken advantage of? Xining shook her head. That's right. Those people outside are actually the least worthy of our attention. They only know how to provoke a war of words. Often, they don't have any real ability. At most, they're just showing off. They don't do any real harm to us. Often, it's those who don't move on the surface but scheme in the dark that are truly terrifying. Chu Qingyan felt that perhaps this was an opportunity to properly nurture the two of them. Only then would they be able to hold their own in the future. Thus she spoke in great detail. That's why, for those who like to make things difficult with words, the more you pay attention to them, the more excited they become. If you ignore them, they'll feel that they're not interested and will cease their banners and drums. Thus, there's no need to bicker with these people on the surface. You'll raise their status, but you'll end up lowering your own. Xining and Jasper both benefited greatly from this and nodded in agreement. Xining said somewhat excitedly, So mistress means that the dog that bites doesn't bark, and the dog that barks doesn't bite? Chu Qing broke into laughter and said to Jasper, Xining's analogy is really vivid. A trace of a smile also appeared on Jasper's stoic face. Xining rubbed her head and also smiled foolishly. However, we can't just suffer in silence for no reason. Jasper, remember these people's carriages today, and have Water Spirit investigate their origins. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win. In any case, I have all the time in the world to collect these debts. Chu Qingyan's smile disappeared and her expression became somewhat cold. She was quite similar to Xiao Su's usual style. Jasper replied, Yes. Xining suddenly understood. Mistress, the servant understands. We have to deal with different people differently. For some people, we can't immediately retaliate. We can wait until later to deal with them. It seems that this little melon seed is quite enlightened. Not bad. As an encouragement, come, let me reward you with good news. Chu Qingyan pinched her smooth little face. What good news? Xining was pleasantly surprised. This time, your family's Jean Xian is also here. Ah, mistress is so annoying. Xining covered her face. Haha. Chapter 1084. The people outside talked for a long time in this hot summer, but there was no movement from the other party. They couldn't help but ask for a rebuff, and went to rest. Many times, the more arrogant and despotic others were, the more you didn't take them seriously, and the more frustrated they would feel. They couldn't do anything to you, and could only be a clown at the side. This was the case at the palace gates. When those people heard the cheerful laughter coming from Chu Qingyan's carriage, they couldn't help but suffer internal injuries. It turned out that the other party didn't even want to pay attention to them. Right at this moment, a carriage approached them. When Chu Qingyan heard the news, she lifted the curtain and saw Qilingyi and Yu Tianyue sitting in the opposite carriage. When they were being ostracized by everyone, the two of them were still willing to get close to them. It was really quite surprising. You're here too. She smiled and greeted them. Big Sister Chu, when we heard that you were here, Big Sister Lingyi and I came to find you. Yu Tianyue said happily as soon as she saw him. Qilingyi, who was beside her, also nodded at her with a smile. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. I'm very happy that you still remember me. It's hard to forget a girl like you who's so good-looking, gentle, and friendly to others. Yu Tianyue had a childish temperament, so she spoke with such sincerity and joy that others couldn't help but smile. Did you eat too much honey today? Why are you speaking so sweetly? Chu Qingyan teased her. At this moment, Qilingyi looked around and asked softly, Big Sister Chu, His Royal Highness didn't come with you? Before Chu Qingyan could answer, Xining had already replied indignantly, If His Highness came, my master wouldn't have to suffer these people's idle anger. That's true. I also heard people talking about it just now. I think it's probably because they're full and have nothing to do. Sister Chu, you don't have to pay attention to them. Yu Tianyue very considerately comforted her. Chu Qingyan smiled gently. She felt that this little girl was quite cute. I know, I didn't take it to heart. Qilingyi nodded in agreement. In fact, when she heard that the King of England didn't send Chu Qingyan here, she was a little regretful that she couldn't see him. However, she was more thankful that the King of England didn't dote on her that much. No one knew what Qilingyi was thinking. The sun was getting brighter and brighter. There were eunuchs from the palace in front of them registering the number of people. Before they reached them, Chu Qingyan had 2 servant girls take out the pastries in the carriage and share them with the 2 misses. Yu Tianyue and Qilingyi were polite at first, but in the end, they couldn't resist the temptation of the delicious food, and asked the maid beside them to take it. Yu Tianyue took a bite and exclaimed in surprise, "This plum blossom crisp is delicious. Big sister Chu, where did you buy this?" "This was made by the servant girls in our fu. It's not sold outside." Xining smiled as she replied. "So that's how it is. No wonder I, who is invincible in the capital, haven't eaten it before." Yu Tianyue suddenly realized. She didn't have time to speak and picked up another piece to eat. Qilingyi put down the pastry in her mouth, her eyes full of inquiry. "I've heard before that His Royal Highness has a few servant girls who are very skilled in various fields, including food, housing, and transportation." Xining was a little surprised. Miss Qi actually knows. That's true. They are very skilled. This servant also admires them. Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. This is called specialization in a field. As long as you concentrate on one area, you will achieve amazing results. Don't belittle yourself. You also have your own unique areas. Go back and work hard to settle accounts with me. Xining stuck out her tongue. Master wants to squeeze this servant's surplus labor again. You actually learned to ridicule me. Are you itching for a beating? She pretended to threaten. Xining immediately cooperated and softly said, "This servant doesn't dare. Master, please spare me." This scene caused everyone to burst into laughter. Qilingyi said enviously, "Big sister Chu, your relationship is so good." When Chu Qingyan saw the envious gazes of Qilingyi and Xueling, she recalled the information that Xueling had given her. Although these 2 young ladies were born of the main wife, they still had a few brothers and sisters who were born of concubines in the residence. Their interactions with the servants were definitely not a simple master-servant relationship. There was definitely some hidden infighting within the inner courtyard. Unlike her, Xining and Jasper, these people were all trained by her and were also her capable assistants. She suddenly felt that she was lucky not to have been born into such a complicated family. We grew up together, so our relationship is naturally deeper. Right, why are the 2 of you sitting in the same carriage? Chu Qingyan was curious. Yu Tianyue said quickly, "It's like this. Because the journey to the National Temple is a bit long, I was afraid that the journey would be boring, so I asked big sister Lingyi's mother to let her sit with me. So we traveled together." Chu Qingyan nodded, indicating that she understood. At this moment, Yu Tianyue wiped her face and complained, "It's so hot today. I hope it will rain," after praying for blessings to lower the temperature. Little sister Tianyue, wipe carefully. Your makeup is almost ruined. Qilingyi turned and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Chu Qingyan turned to look in the direction of the voice, and saw Yu Tianyue's face with patches of red and white, like a little kitten. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh. Then what should I do? The weather is too hot. I want to wipe the sweat off my face. Yu Tianyue had a long face. When she heard Chu Qingyan's laughter, she couldn't help but turn to look at her with grievance. She just happened to see that there wasn't a single trace of sweat on her sparkling and translucent skin, as if she had discovered a new continent. "Big sister Chu, why does your face look like it just peeled off an eggshell? It's so smooth and translucent, so enviable." At the same time, these words attracted Qilingyi. She discovered that not only Chu Qingyan, but even her 2 servant girls' makeup was more delicate than the young ladies'. It felt like they didn't have any makeup on, but they were very beautiful and exquisite. Chu Qingyan blinked, and a light flashed in her eyes. She found a business opportunity. "Maybe it's because the rouge and face powder I use is different from yours, so I can maintain the makeup on my face and not ruin it." What rouge and face powder? Big Sister Chu, please tell us. When it came to the topic of beauty and hair, the girls were very enthusiastic and interested. Yu Tianyue, with a little kitten's face, asked anxiously. It comes from Jiangnan, and the merchants gave it the name of Jiansheng. There are a lot of products in it, such as lipstick, face cream, moisturizer, foundation, and so on. The effect is very good. These products are very popular in Jiangnan, but maybe they haven't spread to the capital. Maybe if I tell you, you won't have much of an idea. How about this? Since there's still some time before we set off, why don't you come to my carriage? I'll let someone touch up Tianyue's makeup, and you'll know the effect when you experience it yourself. Chu Qingyan's suggestion immediately received the response of the two young ladies, and they got off the carriage one after another. Chapter 1085. The people who had been paying attention to Chu Qingyan's situation were very surprised to see Yu Tianyue and Qi Lingyi running into her carriage. Qi Lingyi's father was the grand scribe, a famous pedantic old scholar. He only insisted on right or wrong, and was very stubborn. Yu Tianyue's father was a military cavalry officer. He usually walked around the Sichuan emperor, and was full of brute force. Both of them were neutral parties in the court, and did not attach themselves to any prince. One was too stubborn and the other was too timid. Now that both of their daughters had coincidentally entered the future King of England's consort's carriage, this signal made people from the other parties somewhat unable to sit still. 1 spread to 10 and 10 to 100, and the surrounding people's gazes fell on Chu Qingyan's carriage. Of course, the people inside the carriage did not know what the people outside were thinking. At this time Yu Tianyue was sighing. Big Sister Chu, your carriage is so cool. It's like the difference between ice and fire. His Highness knows that my master is afraid of heat, so he had people put a lot of ice in the carriage. In addition, the design of our carriage is different from the ones on the market. It has a very big function, which is ventilation. Don't look at these curtains and pillows. They are made of ice silk and are very cool to the touch. Xining opened the small box and took out the products, explaining with a smile. Yu Tianyue's eyes were shining. She touched the curtains and said enviously, His Royal Highness treats Big Sister Chu so well. He even thought of these details. People outside say that the King of England is unromantic and doesn't know how to be considerate. I think it's all a lie. Rumors can't be trusted. At the side, Qi Lingyi was looking at the carriage. When she heard Xining's words, she felt a strong sense of envy in her heart. It turned out that His Royal Highness was such a considerate person. She really hoped that she could replace Sister Chu and enjoy his thoughtfulness. Chu Qingyan was amused by Yu Tianyue's straightforward words, but she still expressed her own opinion. Actually, to judge a person's good or bad, you shouldn't just listen to rumors, but you should interact with him face to face. The rumors outside really don't match my highness. Yu Tianyue still wanted to say something, but Chu Qingyan raised her hand and said with a smile, Little cat, you'd better deal with your face first. Otherwise, how will you face people when you go out later? Only then did Yu Tianyue realize this. She immediately shut her mouth and looked at her anxiously. Everyone was amused by her appearance. Chu Qingyan waved her hand and asked Xining to come up and do her makeup again. After that, the two of them were attracted by the things that Xining took out. They felt that it was very strange, but it was very comfortable to use. Yu Tianyue kept asking questions, and Xining explained to her while doing her makeup. Yu Tianyue couldn't see the makeup process, so she could only feel that it was comfortable. Qi Lingyi, who was watching from the side, was more and more shocked by the changes on Yu Tianyue's face. At first, she would still talk to Yu Tianyue, but in the end she was completely stunned. What's wrong? Is it very strange? After Xining finished doing her makeup, Yu Tianyue was about to take the mirror that Jasper handed over. When she saw her friend's expression, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Look at the mirror yourself. Qi Lingyi widened her eyes. Yu Tianyue picked up the mirror uneasily. When the image in the mirror appeared clearly in front of her eyes, she couldn't help but raise her hand to touch her face. Looking at the woman with white teeth and red lips, she asked the person in front of her in a daze, This person is really me? It's the real deal. Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. It's so amazing. It's like I'm a different person. I can't believe I can be so beautiful. Aw. Sister Lingy, look, I've become prettier. Yu Tianyue was wild with joy. You're already very pretty. These products are just the icing on the cake. Chu Qingyan looked at the cute and beautiful girl in front of her, and the corners of her eyes were tinged with a smile. Thank you, Sister Chu, Yu Tianyue said gratefully. At this moment, Qi Lingyi said timidly, Sister Chu, I also want to wear this makeup. Can I? Chu Qingyan's face lit up. Of course. She couldn't ask for more. These two girls were definitely more popular than her in the capital city. With this makeup, they would definitely attract a lot of girls. Moreover, it would have the best effect of comparing the past to the present. They were practically free advertising models. Thus, Xining started to put on Qi Lingyi's makeup. At this moment, Yu Tianyue seemed to have thought of something after admiring it for a while. She immediately turned her head and pleaded, Sister Chu, I also want to buy this product. Can I ask you to buy it for me? Since this product came from Jiangnan, and she had never seen the madams and girls in the capital city use it, it proved that this product had never appeared in the capital city before. It was in a girl's nature to love beauty, especially at this age. Now that she saw this product, it was as if she had seen a treasure. Her tone was pitiful, and her expression was yearning. It was as if she wouldn't leave if Chu Qingyan didn't agree to her request. These words were what Qi Lingyi was thinking. She couldn't help but look at Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan looked at the two eagerly looking girls in front of her. It was exactly what she wanted. She smiled and said, You don't have to be anxious. I heard that the boss is planning to open a shop in the capital city that specializes in selling these products. Perhaps you'll hear about it when we come back from our fast. That's great. Yu Tianyue and Qi Lingyi both smiled happily. Chu Qingyan smiled and took the two small bags from Xining. These two bags were used for your makeup just now. It's enough for you to support your fast. When you come back, you can go to the shop and buy new ones. The two girls took the bags and were very grateful. After the two of them left in high spirits, Xining smiled and said, I believe that it won't be long before many people know about the continuation of the product. These two young ladies should know a lot of people. They'll more or less attract a lot of customers for young Master Hua. Jasper evaluated objectively. No matter how many people we can attract, it's always useful. Moreover, these two girls look quite likable. I've made two good friends. It seems that this fast trip is something to look forward to. Chu Qingyan supported her chin and smiled slightly as she listened to the exclamations coming from the carriage next door. She didn't know what Empress Liang was dawdling about. She waited from early in the morning until almost noon before someone gave the order to set off. A large group of golden carriages drove out of the palace gate. After they were far away, a group of women's carriages followed one after another. Although they had waited for almost an entire morning, some inconceivable things had happened. For example, Yu Tianyue and Qi Lingyi had only been in Chu Qingyan's carriage for a while before they came down. Although they were still the same people, they were more pleasing to the eye than before. This made many people puzzled. They planned to find an opportunity to inquire about it when they entered the national temple. Perhaps Chu Qingyan didn't expect that because of this sudden idea, it would bring vitality to her and Huaxiu's business. Chapter 1086. Everyone followed along as the 100 carriages headed towards the national temple in a grandiose procession. At this time, Empress Liang was smashing a cup in the carriage. The clothes just had to be ruined when Ben Gong was about to leave. How did you do your job? The palace maids immediately knelt down. One of the head palace maids said fearfully, We servants also don't know. They were all properly stored in the cabinet. Last night, this servant even took them out to examine them carefully. We didn't find any problems, so we also don't know why the problem occurred this morning. That's right. Your Highness, please don't be angry. We truly didn't find any problems. The palace maids agreed. You keep saying that you didn't find any problems, but you've delayed Ben Gong's departure until now. Ben Gong doesn't want to listen to your explanations right now. Luoyun, have someone drag them away and interrogate them carefully. See who exactly did something to them. Empress Liang waved her hand coldly. The mouths of these people were covered. and they were silently taken away from the carriage. When only Empress Liang and Luo Yun were left in the carriage, Luo Yun offered tea. Your Highness, please calm down. Don't get angry and harm your body. This matter is simply an extraordinary humiliation to Ben Gong. Ben Gong has always been punctual, but Ben Gong was delayed for so long because of this last-minute change of clothes. Ben Gong had originally wanted to use this opportunity to win over the hearts of the people. These womenfolk have been waiting outside for so long, so they definitely have resentment in their hearts. The gains simply don't make up for the losses. Empress Liang was so angry that she couldn't even drink the tea. Luo Yun was also a bit angry. Your Highness, who do you think did this? Aside from those people in the palace who want to see Ben Gong make a fool of, who else could it be? Empress Liang gave a humph, her expression so dark that it looked like water was about to drip from it. This servant feels that the person behind the scenes wants to delay your appearance, so that these womenfolk will be dissatisfied with you. This will make people think that your fasting this time was just an act. This move is extremely frightening. Luo Yun was startled awake as she thought of this. She hastily said. Empress Liang coldly said. This empress has already thought of this point. It's nothing more than seeing how His Majesty dotes on this empress so much this time. So she's jealous and hateful. Once we arrive at the imperial temple, keep a close eye on them, and see if you can make these bitches spit out who bought them. Also, when we're resting halfway, get someone to send some cooling fruits to the women to make up for it. Luo Yun nodded. This servant understands. Empress Liang took the teacup, took a sip, and relaxed her expression. Then she asked indifferently, did anything happen outside the palace just now? Nothing much happened. I just heard that many people are hostile towards Miss Chu. It's just that Miss Chu didn't pay attention to them. Luo Yun saw that her master was in a good mood, and immediately reported. This Chu Qingyan stole the limelight at the palace banquet, causing these arrogant noblewomen and young misses of the capital to harbor ill feelings towards her. They'll definitely find her unpleasant to the eye. However, this is also good. Let her suffer a bit, and temper her temper. This way, it'll be easier for me to control her in the future. Send someone to keep an eye on Chu Qingyan. If there's any movement, report it to me. That's right. Remember to tell Jing Girl and Bing Girl to do their best to show off their talents at this time's fasting. This will pave the way for them in the future. Empress Liang lifted her brows as she spoke unhurriedly. I've already sent a few palace mama to the two young misses. When the time comes, they'll give them more pointers. This servant will also send someone to remind the two young misses. Luo Yun bowed. Very good. After speaking, Empress Liang slowly closed her eyes to rest. That's right, Your Highness. Hong Yi sent a message yesterday. Luo Yun said in a small voice. Empress Liang opened her eyes and a light flashed through them. This time, Chu Qingyan isn't in the Prince Fu. Have her act according to the circumstances. Don't miss this great opportunity. This servant will give her a reply right away. Luo Yun understood and quietly withdrew. Empress Liang's lips hooked. This son wanted to fight with his mother? No matter what, he wouldn't be able to win. Sooner or later, he would have to listen to her obediently. While the capital was in full swing preparing for the fasting, in Sichuan town, there was another group of people that were slowly and inconspicuously heading towards the capital. With Xiaoho's 3 chances, Peng Zhijing felt that she had a golden medal that could allow her to escape anytime and anywhere. No one would dare to stop her. Thus, she wasn't in a hurry and quietly waited in the carriage. In any case, she was eating and drinking well. When the time came, she would find a chance to escape. Peng Zhijing finally stopped for a few days, allowing the group of envoys who had been on tenterhooks the entire time to sleep peacefully. During a meeting, Envoy Tori had a whole new level of respect for Xiaoho. He asked him what method he had used to intimidate this clever princess. Even the crown prince couldn't subdue her. Xiaoho revealed a mysterious smile and didn't give an answer. He only told them that they didn't need to keep a close watch on her for the time being. If anything happened, they didn't need to be surprised. He was fully in charge. With the crown prince's previous instructions, Tori was relieved to entrust the princess to him. That night, Peng Zhijing clearly felt that there weren't many people watching her. Thus, she took the opportunity to knock out a maid and changed into her clothes before lying down in the carriage. Then, she pretended to be a maid and got off the carriage. She openly walked on the road illuminated by the firelight, because she had previously told all the maids to learn how to walk with her sick leg. Otherwise she would be unhappy. Everyone was used to it and didn't pay much attention to it. Thus, she used the excuse of getting water as an excuse to drag her sick leg and run away. But when she entered the forest, she slowly restrained her dancing and slowed down until she couldn't take another step, because she saw a person standing in the darkness. When that person slowly walked out of the darkness and revealed his true face, Peng Zhijing's eyes twitched. "You, princess, this is the first time." Xiao smiled gently. It was indescribably gentle, but in Peng Zhijing's eyes, it was like a demon in the dark night. She couldn't help but shiver. "Then can I still run now?" She suddenly wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. These people's IQ was higher than hers. Sooner or later, she would be eaten up by them. "Please." Xiao politely extended a hand. Peng Zhijing looked at him and calmly said, "Give me 2 hours, then come and find me." "Okay." Xiao nodded without hesitation. Peng Zhijing pursed her lips and brushed past him, not stopping at all. She must run as far away as possible, and not have anything to do with these people anymore. Xiao smelled the faint fragrance of flowers in the air. He slowly turned around and watched the limping and slender figure gradually disappear into the bushes. A doubt floated in his heart. What was supporting such a weak woman like her to keep struggling and have the courage to clamor? Perhaps he would have to wait until he caught her before he could solve this mystery. Chapter 1087. Even though she had Xiao's promise, Peng Zhijing still did not dare to be careless. She dragged her sick leg and limped as she looked for a place to hide. The injury on her leg should have healed long ago, but because she kept getting injured while she was running away, in addition to the poor medical skills of the ancient times, the medicine that she applied did not work at all. She felt that the injury on her leg seemed to have worsened, so she could not run very far in 2 hours. So, she decided to hide. Previously, Xiao told her not to choose to hide in a tree, but she insisted on doing so. She used the other party's mentality, thinking that she would not fall in the same place again. She wanted to challenge his mentality. This was called all is fair in war. So when she reached a place where she could not see Xiao, she found a large tree that looked like it was full of leaves and climbed up quickly. Then, she swung her legs and panted heavily to rest. She did not die of exhaustion along the way, but she did not dare to be careless. She kept an eye on the time, and very soon, an hour had passed in torment. "It's here." She heard the sound of a large group of people carrying out a carpet search. So, she held her breath and held onto the tree trunk with one hand, and covered her nose and mouth with the other. She restrained herself and did not allow herself to make any noise. And at this moment, the group of people had already neared her position. "We didn't see anyone. Search in front." The wind carried the sound of leaves rustling and the soldiers' discussion. Seeing that these people were about to pass under her tree, her heart jumped to her throat. But these people did not leave so quickly. Instead, they unexpectedly stopped. Because at this moment, Xiao suddenly stopped everyone and looked towards Peng Zhijing's position. Peng Zhijing nervously watched their actions through the gaps of the leaves. At this moment, when she saw Xiao's gaze, she immediately shrunk her neck. However, she felt that his action meant that he had already discovered her. "Princess, this prince had once advised you not to hide in the tree. Unfortunately, princess does not listen to good advice." His gentle eyes had a faint smile, but this smile did not reach his eyes. Peng Zhijing still wanted to put up a final struggle, but unfortunately, the other party's gaze had already locked onto her. Even the leaves could not hide her figure. In the end, she could only accept her fate. "You're good. You were able to discover me like this. I thought the most dangerous place was the safest place," Peng Zhijing said, her voice full of regret. "Thank you for your praise, princess," Xiao said without showing any emotion. Peng Zhijing pursed her lips and stretched out her arms to the person standing not far away. "I can't go down." Xiao raised his eyebrows, indifferent to her words. "Ben Wang believes that since princess can go up, You should be able to come down. I also want to go down myself, but look at my feet. Do I look like I can go down? She lifted her swollen pig trotters and felt very depressed. If it weren't for the inconvenience of her legs, she wouldn't have been caught so easily. Xiao looked at her feet. Even her shoes couldn't hide the bruises, but this didn't change his mind. He waved his hand and signaled for the guards beside him to go forward and help her. He turned around and wanted to leave. Hey, if you don't want to escort a crippled princess to the capital and suffer the scolding of your emperor, then you can just leave me here. When Pang Zhijing saw him being so cold-blooded, she couldn't help shouting out. Xiao stopped in his tracks and turned around. The smile in his eyes had completely disappeared. Princess is right. Then it's better if this prince does it himself. After saying that, the guards immediately retreated and made room for him. When Xiao stood under the tree, he looked up and saw a pink-blue figure sitting on the branch. The sunlight shined down and he could only see her stubborn and bright eyes. He narrowed his eyes and his body fell down like a butterfly. Very quickly, a soft body fell into his arms. The fragrance filled his nose and he was suddenly a bit stunned. Pang Zhijing still had some lingering fear. Actually, she was a bit afraid of heights, but in order to escape, she had no other choice. Xiao had saved her once and caught her again. So in her heart, Xiao was her enemy, but he was also someone who had enough strength to ensure her safety. When Xiao came back to his senses, he looked at the person patting his chest and coldly said, "Princess, this prince doesn't like being threatened by others." "Same to you," Pang Zhijing replied. Xiao did not hesitate and put her down on the ground. "You still have one last chance," Xiao reminded her with a fake smile. Pang Zhijing was stunned and then glared at him in displeasure. "I don't need you to remind me, I know." After saying that, she turned to leave. But before she could take 2 steps, she suddenly turned back. Xiao raised his brows as he looked at her in confusion. What kind of trick did she want to play? Pang Zhijing stretched out her hand and pursed her lips. "I'm hungry. Give me some dry food first. If there's a chance to meet, I'll return it to you." Xiao was a bit surprised, but looking at the embarrassed girl in front of him who was red from ears to neck, his heart trembled. Suddenly, he felt his mood turn for the better. He gave a low laugh, like a spring breeze that melted the snow. Pang Zhijing heard his laughter and flew into a rage out of humiliation. "If you don't want to give, then don't give. Why are you laughing at me? So annoying." She turned to leave, but she heard the person behind her with a smile. "Come, prepare some dry food for the princess to escape." At this time, a guard handed over a small package. Pang Zhijing did not even open it, and directly carried it on her back. She tightened the straps and slightly lowered her head. With her back facing him, she seriously said, "Give me a day's time. If you find me again, I won't run anymore." Xiao's gaze focused on that slender back. Although she was petite and weak, her voice made him feel unexpectedly strong. "Okay." He was silent for a moment before finally responding. "Okay, then let's not meet again." Pang Zhijing smiled and turned to give him a brilliant smile. Then, she waved her hand with all her might and finally limped into the flowers. "Let's not meet again?" After waiting for her to leave, Xiao muttered her words and lightly sneered. "You're really confident. Lord, this southern blue princess is full of tricks. Do we need to send people to follow her and capture her when the time limit is up?" Chai Xingyu looked in the direction where she disappeared and suggested, "Ever since the Prince of Nansong handed her over to Lord, the Southern Blue envoys no longer cared about the princess. They even seemed to be gloating over Lord's misfortune, and wanted to see him suffer. If the princess really ran away, how would he explain it to his superiors?" Xiao clasped his hands behind his back. His voice was as gentle as usual. "Since this prince dares to make this bet, this prince naturally has his own plans. In a while, bring the Southern Blue envoys and leave in the direction of the capital. There's no need to wait for us." Chai Xingyu nodded. This subordinate obeys. Chapter 1088. The Fu of the King of England. Xiao Su and Lin Fingyi returned and the two sat down in the study. "You are so assured to let your little princess Fei face those demons and monsters?" Lin Fengyi put down the teacup, his tone curious and teasing. Xiao Su frowned, his voice faint. She is not a child, she can handle it herself. Is that so? You are holding the book upside down. Lin Fengyi kindly reminded. Xiao Su stilled and looked down at the book in his hand. His eyes flashed and he casually put it on the table. Lin Fengyi couldn't help but laugh. It seems that the famous god of war is not always calm. Once it has to do with your little princess Fei, you are not so rational. Xiao Su glanced coolly at him. You talk a lot today. You can't blame me. It is rare to see you act strangely. Of course, I have to appreciate it. Otherwise, there won't be another opportunity like this. Lin Fengyi waved the fan in his hand and said with a smile. Xiao Su didn't plan to pay attention to him. But the other party didn't seem to care about what he was thinking at the moment. His gloating was gone, and he suddenly said seriously, Actually, you don't have to focus so much on the defense drill this time. Your mother proposed this fast because she wants you to take the initiative to apply to His Majesty for the position of protector. I believe that as long as you ask, His Majesty won't refuse. This way, you can accompany your little Princess Fei and see her yearning. I don't want to achieve Muha's goal. This way, her ambition will grow. She will think that I am compromising with her or agreeing with her actions. If she does something in the future, I am afraid that I will not be able to stop her. Xiao Su looked up and said in a serious tone, Also, I believe in Ayan. She is not a flower grown in a greenhouse and can withstand storms. Lin Fengyi was slightly surprised. You want to use this opportunity to let her comprehend or grow. He felt that the things that Chu Qingyan had experienced in the past few years were difficult for most people of the same age. In his view, she was already outstanding and powerful enough. Was his good friend still not satisfied? Xiao Su smiled faintly. Ayan is very smart, but she has been by my side for so many years. She has only faced those open and covert fights, but she is still not good enough when it comes to the subtle fights between women. This time, I hope that she can grow up so that she can truly take charge of things on her own. Lin Fengyi didn't think that he was considering this and couldn't help but ask, Then you are willing? So what if I am unwilling? Only when I'm not by her side will she forget her laziness. Only when she has no one to rely on will she face it seriously. Xiao Su frowned. Although in the eyes of outsiders, the little fellow was brave and resourceful, as long as he was around, she would have a heart of dependence, unable to stimulate her inner potential. Although she felt that she was working very hard, in fact, she had not used all her strength. This time he wanted to see if this trip could really stimulate her potential. Xiao Ran, sometimes I can't help but admire you. At a time like this, you can still analyze things so rationally and use such a method to push the people you care about to face. Lin Fengyi was slightly surprised and couldn't help but sigh. Xiao Su smiled bitterly. Actually, he was very reluctant, but he had to do this. Fengyi, I am not a heartless person. I will not force Ayan to do anything. It is just because of our current situation. If we are not strong enough, it is easy for others to plot against us, get hurt, suffer, or even lose our lives. Sometimes, I would rather be like you, an ordinary person. Lin Fengyi shook his head and laughed. Like me, an orphan? Actually, sometimes, I wish I was you. Xiao Su laughed self-deprecatingly. Lin Fengyi's expression slowly changed. He sighed softly. Xiao Su, even if you are an ordinary person, you cannot hide the light on your body. Some people are destined to be extraordinary. This is fate. Your consolation is quite pleasing to the ear. Xiao Su smiled faintly. Lin Fengyi's mouth twitched, indicating that he was unwilling to say anything more to him. Chu Qingyan and the others walked out of the city gate and continued forward. They rested at the foot of the mountain, and then went up the mountain path. This Hugua temple was built on top of a mountain 30 li outside of the city. The scenery there was pleasant, and the vegetation was flourishing. Thus, Chu Qingyan sat in the carriage and lifted the curtain to admire the scenery. Because the sun was very bright, the other carriages did not have as many ice cubes as Chu Qingyan's carriage. Thus, most of them opened the curtains for ventilation. However, the air was hot and everyone had no choice but to stay cooped up in the carriage. His Highness is still the most considerate. He had people prepare everything. Right now we are here to play. Xining sighed as she fanned herself. There's no need to mention how good His Highness is to master. Bai Yu also spoke for the first time. Chu Qingyan was amused. You two little brats have been bribed. Master, come, have a bowl of ice plum soup. Xining obediently presented the bowl. Chu Qingyan received it and drank a mouthful of it happily. Big Ice Cube was afraid that she would not be well taken care of on the road. So he had the residents prepare everything. From the ice cubes in the carriage to the desserts and soup. She had to admit that Big Ice Cube was very meticulous. How much longer until we reach? Chu Qingyan asked casually. According to the journey, we are already halfway up the mountain. If there are no accidents, we will reach the temple in another 2 hours. Jasper calculated and replied. Right at this moment, a familiar voice sounded. Qingyan, you are inside, right? I am Xiao Ran. The youth's clear voice could be heard clearly. Chu Qingyan lifted the curtain and saw the jade-faced youth on the horse. It's you. Aren't you in charge of security? Why do you have time to come here? There were too many things on the road, and I didn't have time to talk to you. I just happened to be patrolling your position, so I came to greet you. Xiao Ran wiped the sweat on his face. He looked a little unnatural as he spoke and felt that he looked quite disheveled. Chu Qingyan nodded. Seeing that his fair face was slightly red from the sun, she said, I know you are busy, so you don't have to delay with me. Then she blinked. Oh right, don't be in a hurry to leave. I have soup here. Drink a bowl to cool down before you leave. With that, she asked Xining to ladle a bowl for him. Xiao Ran gave a silly smile and took it without hesitation. He raised his head and drank it. He felt that it tasted better than anything he had drunk before. His heart was filled with sweetness. Then he left with a reluctant look. Chu Qingyan saw that he drank in such a hurry and felt that he was really a child. She shook her head and retracted her gaze. Just as she was about to put down the curtain, she felt that someone was looking at her. She immediately turned to look, but when she looked, she could no longer see anyone. She muttered to herself and finally put down the curtain. Yao Ruoying lifted the curtain again and looked in Chu Qingyan's direction. Her lips slowly curved. Chapter 1089. The melons and fruits that the Empress sent over, in the hands of that Chu Qingyan, are all crooked melons and dates. I don't know who did something to them, but they are hard to swallow. Meng Shishu's maid Xinger said gloatingly in her ear. Meng Shishu was eating a piece of melon. Hearing this, she glanced at the plate in front of her and gave a contemptuous smile. It seems that the Empress does not like this daughter-in-law that much. That's right. I heard that it's because Chu Qingyan's family background is not prominent and cannot be of any help to His Royal Highness. Therefore, the Empress does not like this Chu Qingyan, who does not have a high background. Xinger flapped her fan and eagerly relayed the news she had heard. Meng Shishu thought of something after hearing this. She immediately sat up straight and put down the melon in her hand. Her eyes were shining. You mean, even though there is an engagement, but Chu Qingyan may not be able to enter the King of England's palace, as long as she is not married to His Royal Highness? Xinger nodded. Mistress is right. Therefore, you do not need to worry too much. Whether or not Chu Qingyan can become the consort of the King of England is still unknown. Meng Shishu tapped her finger on the little table and thought. Then if that's the case, I should show my face more in front of the Empress. Compared to Chu Qingyan, my status is more presentable. Even Mother said that I should take this opportunity to get closer to the Empress. No matter if it is for myself or father, it will be beneficial. Thinking of this, she clapped her hands and looked at the maid in front of her with bright eyes. Xinger, I'll give you a task. When you enter the temple this time, no matter what, you have to find out what the Empress likes and dislikes. Build a good relationship with the maids beside the Empress. If you need money, you don't need to worry about it. Xinger immediately agreed. I will definitely not disappoint you. Only then did Meng Shishu feel at ease to enjoy the cold fruits. In the carriage of the Minister of Right's family, Jing Mingzhu was sitting in the same carriage as her mother. At this moment, she was complaining angrily. Mother, Chu Qingyan is already set to be the consort of the King of England. Why did she still seduce the fourth prince? Just now, She heard the servant say that Xiao Ran deliberately rode his horse to the front of Chu Qingyan's carriage to talk. The way they talked was very intimate. Suddenly, she was full of anger. That Chu Qingyan, as your mother, looks like a vixen at first glance. Madame Jing raised her eyebrows and sneered. Jing Mingzhu's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. Then do you think it's true that Chu Qingyan and His Highness are really? As an unmarried girl, she still didn't dare to say it out loud. Madame Jing knew what she wanted to say. Although Chu Qingyan hasn't seen much of the world, she isn't stupid. She was young before and didn't understand the struggles of the court. Now that the fourth prince is favored by the emperor, and the King of England has been titled as the Lord, she can see that the emperor favors the fourth prince more. So, she has a devious idea and wants to rely on both sides. When the time comes, it will be easier for her to choose. Mother, do you think His Highness will really like this vixen? Jing Mingzhu suddenly became worried. Her fingers twisted her handkerchief and her heart was very nervous. Don't worry. Even if His Highness is interested in Chu Qingyan, consort, you won't allow it. Zhu. Or don't forget that Madame Fu and your mother have been close friends for many years. What she says is probably what consort you wants. Besides, she was raised outside. How can she be as beautiful and smart as our Mingzhu? As long as you show your face in front of His Highness more often, I guarantee that he will have a deep impression of you. When the time comes, when His Majesty has the idea of choosing a consort for His Highness, consort, you will mention it. Then won't your marriage be set in stone? Madame Jing patted her daughter's hand. The wrinkles on her face were almost like chrysanthemums. With her mother's words, Jing Mingzhu was both shy and confident. Mother, what are you talking about? Your daughter doesn't understand a single word. Knowing that her daughter had grown up and knew how to be shy, Madame Jing smiled until her eyes almost narrowed into slits. Okay. Mother won't say any more. Jing Mingzhu was bashful, but she also had a plan in her heart. Even if Chu Qingyan's identity was there, and she didn't have the chance to marry Xiao Ran, she wouldn't let her have an easy time. Since she could remember, she had never lost to anyone. This Chu Qingyan was her stumbling block. She had to find a chance to kill her spirit. Chu Qingyan sat in the carriage and chatted with her two beautiful maids. Her days were free and leisurely. She didn't know how many people in this group were jealous of her and how much influence they would have on her in the near future. She also didn't know what surprises or shocks were waiting for her in the temple. In fact, with her intuition as a woman, she could vaguely feel that this road of fasting wouldn't be smooth. But in her view, she didn't like to worry about the unknown. She liked to have joy today and worry tomorrow. The carriage moved slowly on the mountain road, but they could already see the corner of the temple at the top of the mountain. In the mountain forest, the trees were dense and the environment was quiet and secluded. Everyone seemed to have entered a cool and refreshing world from the hot weather. All the pores on their bodies opened up comfortably. Everyone opened the curtains one after another, and faced the magnificent temple not far away. They couldn't help but reveal joyful smiles. They finally reached their destination. Hugua Temple had already received the news, and had come out early to greet them. Empress Liang got off the carriage. The other concubines and womenfolk also came out. Old Na Yuan Kong greets the Empress. An old man wearing a kasaya bowed to Empress Liang with a benevolent expression. Empress Liang returned the greeting. Great Master need not be so courteous. This Empress came here as a woman of faith to pray for the blessings of the country, and pray for rain for the common people. Thus, Great Master can treat us as ordinary believers. Ba, Empress is considerate. Great Master Yuan Kong put his hands together to return the greeting. Empress Liang nodded with a slight smile. At this time, Great Master Yuan Kong said to everyone, Female benefactors, Old Na has already prepared vegetarian dishes in the side rooms for everyone. Please come in. Many thanks, Great Master. Everyone bowed. Chu Qingyan followed behind the crowd, and looked around curiously. At this moment, she saw that Xiao Ran had already dismounted, and was walking towards the young man who had arrived at the temple earlier to make arrangements. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't help but take a few more glances. She stared at the young man whose back was facing her, and she suddenly had a strange feeling in her heart. But at this time, Everyone slowly surged into the temple under the guidance of the monks on both sides. She had to look away and follow the crowd. When everyone had entered the temple, the person who had been talking to Xiao Ran slowly turned around and looked in the direction that Chu Qingyan had left. His phoenix eyes rose and he gave an enigmatic smile. Chapter 1090. The first thing they did after entering the temple was to offer incense. Empress Liang took the incense from Yuan Kong and knelt down devoutly. The other women took the incense prepared by the monks and knelt down along with Empress Liang. Because Chu Qingyan was the future consort of the King of England, she stood closer to the front. When she bent down and looked up, she saw the golden body of Buddha sitting on the lotus platform. Those emotionless eyes seemed to be looking at her. She originally followed the others to offer incense casually, but now she couldn't help but straighten her back. With respect in her eyes, she sincerely inserted the incense into the incense burner. Although she had met Su Jian, who wanted to lead her into Buddhism not long after she arrived in the capital, she had stubbornly refused and said some words to refute him. But in her heart, she still respected Buddhism very much. After transmigrating here, even if she didn't believe in Buddhism, gods, ghosts or demons before, she now held a reverence for reincarnation. When they returned to their original position, Chu Qingyan suddenly remembered that Su Jian seemed to be the senior monk of Hugua Temple. When she saw him 4 years ago, he was in Jiang Kingdom. Now that so many years had passed, she didn't know if he had returned from his travels. If he had already returned, she really wanted to pay him a visit and personally thank him again for what happened that year. After offering incense, the abbot saw that everyone looked tired, so he asked the monks to lead them to a side room in the backyard. "Master, look." Chu Qingyan was walking forward with the monk who led the way when her sleeve was suddenly tugged. She turned her head and saw Xining giving her a look. She couldn't help but follow her line of sight and saw the two sisters, Liang Danjing and Liang Danbing, standing not far behind her. She didn't expect them to also come. But thinking about it, this was organized by Empress Liang, so she definitely wouldn't forget her family. The Liang sisters also saw her. Liang Danjing smiled and nodded, but Liang Danbing was a proud and arrogant person. She did not maintain a peaceful appearance like her sister. She pulled her lower lip and gave a provocative look. She didn't want to bother with them. Just as she was about to withdraw her gaze, she saw Xining winking at her. She raised her eyebrows and looked over again. This time, she saw Meng Shishu, Jing Mingzhu, and Yao Ruoying, who had a strange smile on her face. Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a headache coming on. It couldn't be right. This wave of little demons had all come? Xining and Jasper looked at her sympathetically. "Master, it seems that we are going to face a lot of demons and ghosts this time." Chu Qingyan heaved a deep sigh. "I accept it. I'll just treat it as subduing demons and demons to maintain the peace of the world." Xining was amused, and Jasper couldn't help but curve her lips. When she entered the rear courtyard, Chu Qingyan inadvertently glanced over and saw the young man from before at the entrance of the temple. Only this time, his side was facing her. He had a very ordinary appearance, but the aura he exuded was not ordinary. She felt that it was a bit strange. But after turning a corner, she couldn't see him anymore. She temporarily put this strange feeling in her heart and didn't think about it anymore. The young man turned around and looked in the direction Chu Qingyan left. At this time, Xiao Ran walked over. When he saw the direction the young man was looking, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "You also know Qingyan?" "I don't know her." The young man smiled and shook his head. "I guess that you didn't know her either. She just returned to the capital not long ago, so you probably haven't seen her before." Xiao Ran thought he understood, but when it came to Chu Qingyan, he had a lot to say. "Doesn't she look very cute?" The young man's gaze was fixed on Xiao Ran, and then he smiled. "She's young, so she's quite delicate." Xiao Ran felt that the word delicate had nothing to do with Qingyan. In his opinion, Qingyan was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen in his life. But it wasn't appropriate to discuss this with him. He gave a low cough and talked about the guards. The young man also recovered his serious expression and answered all the questions. The sky gradually darkened, and the people far away in the mountain forest were trying hard to find the best place to hide. What to do, what to do? This is already the last chance? Where should I hide? Pang Zhijing carried a small cloth bag and washed her face with the river water as she muttered. Time was constantly passing, and she didn't have much time left. But she had overestimated her own ability. With her incomplete body, she wouldn't be able to run far. She angrily picked up a stone and threw it at the river. She was so angry that she was about to go crazy. And at this time, she looked at the stone that fell into the water with a splash, and suddenly had an idea. It's really a case of searching high and low only to find it without any effort. She stood up, put her hands on her hips and laughed to the sky. This time, let's see how you'll find me. Lord, follow the footprints until here. There's no more nearby. The subordinate quickly came back to report. Xiao glanced around, expand the area and continue to search. According to her speed, she wouldn't have run far. Yes, the subordinate responded and immediately scattered. Lord, there's a river in front. Do you want to go there and wash your face? The subordinate following him asked. After walking for a day, he was a little sweaty. Xiao nodded. Strolling to the river, Xiao squatted down and scooped some water to wash his face. He felt a lot more refreshed. He stood up, and with his hands behind his back, he waited for the news from his subordinates. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the people who were searching came back. Lord, we've searched this place, but we still haven't found any trace of the princess. Xiao frowned. Logically speaking, she should be around here. It's impossible for her to disappear into thin air. How could they not find her? He looked at the sky and pondered for a moment. His hand reached into his sleeve and was about to take out the compass that Pang Huang left behind. Suddenly, from the corner of his eye, he saw a bamboo pipe undulating on the river. The corner of his mouth rose slightly and he retracted his hand. There's no need to search. Xiao's words left everyone scratching their heads in confusion. At this moment, Xiao smiled and returned to the shore. With a wave of his long arm, a long bamboo pipe appeared in his fingers. He played with it in the palm of his hand and waited quietly. After a while, the calm river surface suddenly had a few more bubbles. Not long after, there was a gulu-gulu sound. Splash. There was a splash of water and a person stood up from the water. The guards on the shore pulled out their long swords and pointed at the water surface. Cough cough. Pang Zhijing wiped the water on her face. She was in a sorry state and desperately gasped for breath. You sinister bad guy. You actually took away my bamboo pipe. Xiao raised his hand to get the guards to keep their weapons. He looked at her calmly. If I didn't use this move, how would I be able to find the princess? But I have to say that the princess' hiding place this time is indeed a little innovative. Her bamboo pipe was taken away from the river surface by him. She drank a stomach full of water, and was even ridiculed by him. She was in a sorry state. If she could tolerate it, what more could she tolerate? Taking advantage of his unpreparedness, she bent down and splashed water on him. Xiao didn't expect her to be so shameless. In a moment of carelessness, his clothes were drenched by her. Looking at his sleeves, he couldn't help but frown. But the person in the river was still laughing happily. This feeling of being attacked so openly was a little unfamiliar to him. Chapter 1091. Pang Zhijing's laughter was so blatant and unbridled that she did not notice the person standing on the shore, whose face was becoming more and more gloomy. Even those guards could feel their lord's gloomy mood. They couldn't help but want to retreat, but in the end, they stood still and lowered their heads even more to prevent themselves from being implicated. Princess, please take care of yourself. After the laughter died down, Pang Zhijing finally reacted. Her palms slowly propped up her knees as the figure in front of her slowly entered her field of vision. She suddenly felt that something was wrong. At this time, she happened to meet Xiao's expressionless face, without that gentle jade-like smile. His dark green cloak fluttered in the dark, and his threatening figure made this person look even more gloomy like a ghost. She subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. I was just joking. Are you alright? She was so nervous that she stuttered. Although she despised her own cowardice, a wise man submits to circumstances. This moment of weakness was for the sake of a better future. She comforted herself like this. Xiao indifferently looked at her. Princess is in such a good mood, but this king hates jokes the most. This voice was so cold that it could freeze people to death. Pang Zhijing shrunk her neck back and rubbed her arms with her hands. She gave a flattering smile. All right. I won't joke with you in the future. Don't lower yourself to my level. Xiao's expression did not soften because of her words, but when he stared at her, his eyes suddenly became strange. Pang Zhijing did not notice it at first, but later on, she felt that something was wrong and followed his gaze to look at herself. Summer clothes were thin, and with the addition of the water, they stuck to her body, revealing her exquisite curves. She gave a scream and her entire body was submerged in the water, only revealing her head. Xiao's ears were ringing from her earth-shattering scream, but he still gave a low cough and looked away. She was really too stupid to not notice it. Luckily, due to Xiao's intimidation, those guards did not raise their heads. Pang Zhijing's heart was slightly comforted. However, she was very sure that Xiao had seen her naked. Just as she was glaring angrily at Xiao, she suddenly heard him say, "The sky is getting dark. If Princess wishes to continue staying in the water, then this prince will not accompany you." After saying that, Xiao turned around without hesitation. Hey, leaving just like that? That's too ungentlemanly. Seeing that he had really left, leaving only the guards to guard her, Pang Zhijing immediately shouted. She couldn't let him leave just like that. Otherwise, how could she go ashore when she was drenched? Xiao turned to look at her and raised his eyebrows. Gentlemanly? That's an interesting term. Just when she thought he was going to leave without mercy, she saw him put his hand on the belt and untied the cloak. Holding it in his hand, he bent down and put it on the ground. Then he got up and strode into the deep forest where the flames were burning. He had already taken a few steps when she realized that he had left for her. Blinking her eyes, she scrambled to the shore and pulled up her cloak to cover herself. She had to admit that although he looked sickly thin, he was very tall. The cloak was folded a few times on the ground, but it still carried his body temperature. It was very warm, and there was even a faint herbal fragrance. She wrapped the cloak tightly around herself and ran towards Xiao without thinking. Wait a minute. I want to talk to you. Xiao felt that his patience had been worn down by her. He stopped and wanted to see what other tricks she had up her sleeves. After a while, he saw her stumbling towards him, and his tightly knitted brows suddenly relaxed. What does Princess want to talk about? The wind blew past and blew away the cold aura around him, returning him to the elegant and noble lord. Pang Zhijing panted lightly. After she exhaled the foul air in her body, she straightened up and looked at him with bright eyes. She didn't care what kind of gaze he was using to look at her as she spoke to him resolutely. Xiao, I want to make a deal with you. Xiao was a little surprised and his voice carried a taunting smile. Princess, don't forget that you have already used up your 3 chances. You don't have the qualifications to bargain with this king. Pang Zhijing's face turned slightly hot. This was the first time someone had called her shameless, but for freedom and to not be controlled by others, she could still afford to lose this bit of face. Xiao saw that she was filled with shame and anger, but she quickly gathered her courage. Looking at him with sparkling eyes, he was slightly stunned. Of course I know that I no longer have a chance to escape, and I have also proven your intelligence. As long as you don't let me go, I will not be able to escape from your hands, so why should I make a final struggle? She said this with a sigh. She had used her blood and tears to prove this fact. Although she was gritting her teeth, she had no choice but to admit defeat. Xiao expressed his agreement and waited for her to continue. After Pang Zhijing sighed in self-abasement, she said with a firm gaze, Xiao, since you need a princess like me, then I think I have the qualifications to make a deal with you. After entering your Sichuan's capital, I will do my best to help you with whatever you need me to do. However, as long as you achieve what you want, you will set me free and not make things difficult for me. What do you think of this deal? Xiao looked at her with an inquisitive gaze. Wasn't this a deal that you made with your brother, the crown prince? Don't you think it's unnecessary to cooperate with this king? Pang Zhijing gave a self-deprecating laugh. Do you think I will believe a person who pushes my little sister into a pit of fire? Then why do you believe this king? Although this king will not personally push you into a pit like your brother, I am still an accomplice. Xiao Ho was a little confused. Why do I believe him? She had never thought of this question before. Xiao Ho's question had stunned her. Was it because although he was an accomplice, he did not actually harm her? Although he forced her step by step, he was willing to leave the cloak to her? Although he was still unwilling to let her go, he did not make things difficult for her in other aspects? She couldn't help but tightly grasp the cloak as she questioned herself. These seemed like answers, but they also seemed like questions that she couldn't understand. She simply gave up thinking and looked up with puffed cheeks as she said, Maybe it's because your cloak has the aura of my old friend. So I feel that you are a trustworthy person. Xiao Ho, who had only paid attention to her to pass the time, heard her answer. His gaze focused and he looked directly at her. He was a little surprised, a little amazed, and an indescribable feeling grew in his heart. Trustworthy. This really was an unfamiliar word. After she finished speaking, she didn't see any reaction from him. Pang Zhijing walked 2 steps towards him and stood in front of him. She asked angrily, I already told you the reason, so why are you ignoring me? Xiao Ho came back to his senses and looked at the angry girl in front of him. He slowly said, Why are you so sure that this king will cooperate with you? Chapter 1092. Pang Zhijing's face was filled with anticipation, but a bucket of cold water was poured over her head. She felt her entire heart turn cold. She no longer cared about being reserved as she reached out to grab his arm. She flew into a rage. How can you say that? Could it be that after being friends for so many days, it's not enough for you to show some compassion to me? She was standing too close and when she made her move, he could not react in time. At this moment, his hand was being held by her hot fingers and his skin was a bit hot. He narrowed his eyes and wanted to pull his hand back, but she was holding it too tightly. He wanted to use force, but he was afraid of revealing his secret of martial arts, so he couldn't help knitting his brows. Princess, please understand one thing. This king is helping you out of kindness, not helping is my duty. This is not a reason for you to threaten me. Xiao Ho looked at her indifferently. Although the corners of his lips were curled, the smile did not reach his eyes. This sentence woke her up. That's right, he wasn't as simple and crude to her as Pang Huang. It was only because there was no conflict of interest between them. Whether he helped or not, it was all in his hands and she couldn't say anything. She slowly released her fingers and a dejected expression appeared on her face. Xiao Ho's words made her speechless and unable to explain herself. Xiao Ho took a step back and no longer looked at her as he turned to leave. At this time, Pang Zhijing's head drooped down dejectedly as she watched the shadow on the ground slowly leave her line of sight. Her heart slowly tightened. Was she going to accept her fate like this? With Pang Huang's personality, once he completed his goal, would he still let her live in this world? She still hadn't found a way to go back, so she couldn't die like this. When the wind blew, the bells on her feet made a jingling sound. It was clear and pleasant to the ears, but most beautiful things had thorns. So it became her restriction. Restriction? An idea flashed through her mind. Wait! Xiao Ho stopped in his tracks. He didn't know what she wanted to do, but he still slowly turned around. Does Princess have any other advice? His gaze was as gentle as water, but in her eyes, it was like a pool of emotionless stagnant water. He indifferently watched her struggle, and wasn't willing to lend a helping hand. She steadied her mind and walked in front of him again. Her expression was much calmer than before. Didn't you just ask me why I should cooperate with you? All right, I'll tell you now. Xiao Ho raised his eyebrows. She took a deep breath and looked at him with wide eyes. You know martial arts. You're not sick. As soon as she finished speaking, her neck was suddenly grabbed by a hand. Before she could feel the pain, she quickly retreated and her back hit a tree trunk. She felt that her internal organs were about to be displaced, but that wasn't the scariest thing. It was that her neck was about to be broken by him. She couldn't breathe. She wanted to scream for help, but there was no one else here other than him. Xiao Ho, are you planning to silence me? But don't forget, I am a princess. When the time comes to investigate, you won't be able to escape responsibility." She spat out these words with difficulty as her entire face turned red. Every time she said a word, her mind would go blank. "I hate threats the most. This king remembers reminding you." Xiao Ho's smile was the same as before, but his eyes were as cold as ice. All right, just kill me. I don't like this place anyway. I've already died once, so I'm not afraid of dying again." She closed her eyes, looking like she was ready to die. Xiao Ho's eyes fell onto this beautiful face that was as pale as paper. He was completely disheartened, as if he had already given up on struggling. Memories of his youth suddenly flashed through his mind and he was stunned. His fingers had already let go at an unknown time, and he had already slid down from the tree trunk to sit on the ground, desperately coughing. "Xiao Ho, if you don't kill me this time, you can't go back on your word and make a move against me." Pang Zhijing never thought that he would let her go. The feeling of having a new lease on life filled her heart. She could still feel her wildly beating heart that did not have any rhythm, as if it was reminding her that she had just returned from the gates of hell. Xiao Ho took back his hand and placed it behind his back. He looked down at her in a condescending manner. "You really think you can threaten this king?" She took a deep breath and raised her head. Her eyes stared right at him. Her voice was hoarse and unpleasant to hear, but there was a trace of cunning in it. "Although I don't know much about your Sichuan, but in the past few days, I have still inquired about you. You have been weak and sickly since you were young, without the strength to even truss up a chicken. Many people doubt if you can live for long. Because of this, you have been using precious medicines to keep your life, giving people the illusion that you don't have long to live, and that you don't have any strength left. In reality, you are using this kind of method to confuse people, making those opponents ignore your existence, so you can secretly develop your own power. Right now, you are waiting for an opportunity. When the time comes, you will be like a hibernating black panther, suddenly jumping out to kill or reap the benefits. Am I right to say this?" Although she made a solemn vow, no one knew that her palms were sweaty and her body was trembling under the cloak. If it wasn't for the fact that she was sitting with her back against the tree, she probably wouldn't have been able to support herself. As for Xiao Ho, when she began to speak, his smile slowly disappeared. His eyes narrowed bit by bit, as if this was the first time he saw the person in front of him. Could it be that she had been pretending in the past? His heart could not help but be filled with doubts. "Tell me, how did you know?" His voice was filled with danger. What a joke! How could she tell him that she had learned this from novels? The weak and sickly lord, who looked like he did not have any killing power, was actually the most sinister person. "Of course it's because I'm smart and saw through it myself." "How about it, such a smart partner? Do you still want to push it away? If you pass this village, there won't be another shop like this. If you're not willing, then forget it." She arrogantly raised her head, but it was a pity that her face was pale, and the bruises on her neck greatly reduced her expression. Xiao Ho was silent for a moment before finally looking at her with a burning gaze. "Since the princess has invited me with such great hospitality, then this king has no reason to reject." "All right." She suppressed the wild joy in her heart, and pretended to be calm as she raised her hand. "Then let's strike our palms to form an alliance. If one side violates the agreement, then they will leave this world and go to where they should go. No matter if it's another world or heaven or hell. In short, it will be like this." This agreement sounded very strange, but Xiao Ho did not mind. He reached out his hand and lightly struck her. "That's great." After Pang Zhijing said this, her consciousness finally blurred. Xiao Ho looked at the person in his arms. Her face was flushed red and her body was burning hot. It was clear that she had already lost consciousness. He frowned, wondering if he should throw her here for the guards to deal with. But in the end, when he thought of her world-weary expression under his palm, he gave a self-deprecating sigh and used his hands to pick her up. Just treat it as the alliance being formed, giving her the first advantage. Chapter 1093. In the night, Pang Huang sat on a cushion. Beside him was Pang Zhijing, who was clinging onto him like an octopus. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull her away. Because of a moment of softness, he carried her back. In the end, it proved to be a problem for him. It was obvious that she had caught a cold and had a fever. She was still wearing wet clothes. However, there were no women in his entourage, so he couldn't help her change her clothes. In the end, he could only use his inner energy to dry her clothes. Master, the Southern Heavens envoy group has already arrived at the next town. When do we set off? The subordinate asked. Xiao ordered, find a carriage. We'll set off at dawn. Yes, master. The bonfire burned quietly. There were guards patrolling all around. Xiao picked up the water bag and was about to open it when he suddenly heard a low murmur. I want to go home. Dad, Mom, I miss you so much. It came from beside him. He lowered his head and saw Pang Zhijing, who was sleeping very uncomfortably. She was saying something in a hoarse voice. His gaze fell on the bruises on her neck. Finally, he looked away. Invite Mr. Li over. Xiao said in a low voice. Soon, a man in his 30s or 40s came over with a medicine box. He immediately sized him up. Lord, are you feeling unwell? It's not this prince, it's her. Xiao said warmly. Mr. Li was surprised when he saw the woman leaning so close to his lord. After so many years, this was the first time he saw a woman by his lord's side. He didn't dare to delay. He immediately put down the medicine box and crouched down to take her pulse. Don't touch me. I don't want to stay here. I don't want to be with a demon. Pang Zhijing unconsciously pushed Mr. Li's hand away and rubbed her whole body against Xiao's side. Xiao's eyes twitched. Demon? He didn't hesitate to pull her wrist out and handed it to Mr. Li. Mr. Li, who had been unable to touch Pang Zhijing all this time, looked at his lord in surprise. Then he took Pang Zhijing's pulse, not daring to think too much. After a while, Mr. Li withdrew his hand and stroked his beard with a strange expression. Lord, the princess's body is weak. Plus, she's been soaking in the water for too long and has caught a cold. She's a little feverish now, but that's not important. As long as she drinks my decoction later and sweats a little, her illness will be mostly cured. It's just that. Go on. This was within his expectations, but Mr. Li's words made him focus. Mr. Li muttered to himself for a while before sighing. This southern blue princess is suffering from a slow-acting poison. In less than a year, the poison will act up. Xiao was slightly stunned. What poison? There's a tyrannical poison in the southern blue continent called life-severing. Mr. Li stroked his beard and shook his head. It's not that there's no way to detoxify this poison. It's just that the method is very complicated, and I don't have that ability. How long has this poison been in her body? It should be 2 months. Xiao pondered for a moment. It just so happened that she was poisoned when she left the southern blue continent for Sichuan. The poison had been dormant for a year. At that time, her mission in Sichuan would have been completed. He suddenly understood why she said she didn't trust Pang Huang. Perhaps she didn't know that Pang Huang had poisoned her, but she was already subconsciously wary of Pang Huang. Through this matter, he also indirectly understood Pang Huang's character. In order to achieve his goals, he would do anything, and he would keep his promises. As expected, he was a qualified partner. There's one more thing. Mr. Li's words attracted Xiao's attention. The princess's leg injury wasn't that serious in the beginning. Even if she was injured a few more times, it wouldn't affect her recovery. However, her leg injury has dragged on for so long because of an external cause. What external cause? Xiao asked. Someone tampered with the princess's medicine. Or rather, the princess's medicine was skimped on. Out of 10, the medicine's efficacy was only 30%. It delayed the wound's recovery. Based on the dosage of the medicine, it would probably take her until the capital to fully recover. Mr. Li's words caused Xiao to involuntarily look at Pang Zhijing. It was likely that Pang Huang had tampered with the medicine to prevent her from escaping. At this time, Mr. Li saw that he had sunk into deep thought and didn't dare disturb him. He went to brew the medicine. After the medicine was brewed, Mr. Li helped Pang Zhijing drink it, and then left. Hot, so hot. The medicine began to take effect. Pang Zhijing couldn't help but tug at the cloak on her body. In the end, she flung it to the side. Her entire body was like a loach. When Xiao wasn't paying attention, she burrowed into his arms. Then, she found a comfortable position in his arms and fell asleep. When Xiao lowered his head, she was already sleeping soundly in his arms. Her cheeks were pink from the effects of the medicine. In this kind of dark night, it was like a piece of fruit that gave off a sweet smell. Just now, he didn't know who it was that said to stay away from a demon like him. In the end, she still ran in herself. He curled his lips and shook his head. He wanted to reach out and push her away, but at this time he suddenly felt his body lose strength. The blood in his body flowed slower. He couldn't help but frown and lean against the tree trunk. He slowly adjusted his breathing. He couldn't care about the person in his arms. After a moment, he opened his eyes again. The clothes on his back were already soaked, but his breathing had stabilized. After so many years, his body had been close to normal. He didn't get sick anymore. But today, it suddenly acted up. Was it because of emotional fluctuations? He couldn't help but lower his head and look at the person in his arms. Because of her? Although Pang Zhijing's life wasn't worth worrying about, looking at this sleeping innocent girl, her experiences overlapped with his own, evoking memories of his youth. He leaned against the tree trunk and looked at the night sky above his head. Suddenly, the corners of his lips curled up. Fate played tricks on him. It turned out that he and her were only chess pieces in the hands of the heavens. But he didn't believe that he would be so useless for the rest of his life. No one could control his future. Pang Zhijing, who was in a deep sleep, probably didn't know that the reason why she was able to work with Xiao so smoothly and receive his leniency when she was sick was because he saw his own shadow in her. He was the one who was wronged, lonely and proud, licking his wounds alone. In the Hugua temple, everything was quiet. Chu Qingyan was served by the maids. After she finished washing up, she prepared to read a book before going to bed to rest. This temple is really different from normal people's homes. It is clean and tidy without any excess. The vegetarian food is also unique, but it is a bit plain. Xining said as she wiped the table. Chu Qingyan said with a smile. It seems that you are very satisfied with the temple. How about I tell the masters and see if they still need a disciple and send you over? Xining immediately shouted. Master, please spare this servant. This servant wants to be with you forever. The people in the room couldn't help laughing. Chu Qingyan shook her head and laughed. From the corner of her eyes, she saw the guard standing not far away from the window and suddenly thought of something. I think I might have to go out tonight. Her gaze was slightly heavy and her tone was very calm. Chapter 1094. Mistress, what is it that needs to be done at night? Can't we do it tomorrow during the day? Seeing her mistress change into a servant's uniform, Xining asked in confusion. After finishing her preparations, Chu Qingyan lightly patted Xining's head and smiled. Of course it's something that can't be seen in public. Otherwise, why would your mistress sacrifice her sleep time to go out? Then why don't you bring this servant along? Xining blinked her eyes, flashing with a light that begged to be taken away. Silly girl, we're not going out to play. I'm just going to verify something. After saying this, she pinched her little face and told her to obediently wait for them to come back. She then called Jasper and went out. As soon as they went out, they were met with patrolling guards. "Two misses, it's so late. Where are you going?" One of the guards asked politely. Chu Qingyan glanced at Jasper, and Jasper immediately went forward and replied, "My mistress lost an earring when she entered the temple today. She ordered us to go out and look for it." "Does that miss know where it was dropped? We can help look for it," the guard inquired. "It's probably in the courtyard in front. You don't have to trouble yourselves. We can look for it ourselves and report to my mistress later," Jasper continued. "Okay, then be careful." The guard retreated. At this time, Chu Qingyan and Jasper nodded at each other and walked towards the small forest in front. After reaching the depths, Chu Qingyan stood still and leaned against a tree trunk with a leisurely expression. "Mistress, aren't we going to continue?" Jasper was confused. Didn't she say that they were going out to look for someone? But now looking at her mistress who was looking around, she was very puzzled. Chu Qingyan changed into a more comfortable position. When she was about to explain, her eyes suddenly focused and she raised her eyebrows. I think the person I'm waiting for is here. Before Jasper could understand, she saw her master slowly turn around and look into the darkness of the forest. The smile on her face was unfathomable. They saw a figure walking towards them from afar. He was wearing ordinary clothes and had a tall figure. His steps were leisurely, and he exuded a charming aura from head to toe. However, when he reached the light, the face that appeared before them was too ordinary. It was so ordinary that if he was thrown into a crowd, he would be drowned out. Who are you? Jasper immediately stood in front of her to protect her master. She was very alert. That young man did not say a word. He did not care about Baiyu at all. Instead, his gaze landed on Chu Qingyan, who was behind Baiyu. His lips curled into a mysterious smile, making it hard for anyone to guess what he was thinking. Jasper, don't worry. Go to the side and keep watch. See if anyone is coming. Chu Qingyan patted her shoulder, indicating for her to relax. Jasper saw that her mistress had spoken, and did not say anything more. She immediately retreated to the side. While being vigilant of the surroundings, her eyes swept over the young man from time to time. From the intuition of a martial artist, this person was unfathomable. Moreover, his martial arts were above hers. She could not help but be wary of him. Chu Qingyan returned her gaze to the young man in front of her. Spreading out her hands, she said, "My servant girls are more sensitive. Don't mind them. Since they are your people, why would I mind?" The young man was still smiling. Towards her words, he gave an ambiguous answer. "All right, I won't beat around the bush with you." Chu Qingyan crossed her arms and leaned against the tree. She curled her lips. "What should I call you now? Higashio Motetsu? Or Xiao Ran's subordinate, Mr. Donghua?" The smile on the young man's lips finally turned into a sincere smile. He raised his hand to brush his cheek. When he withdrew his hand, there was a thin human skin mask on his finger. When he raised his head, his devilishly charming appearance was revealed under the moonlight. His frivolous expression was just like before. "I told you no one can imitate your devilish aura. You can't erase this aura. It really is you." Chu Qingyan was stunned. Then she said unhappily. Higashio Motetsu chuckled. "I was just about to ask you how you recognized me. Now it seems that you care too much about me. Even if I disguise myself 1,000 times, you can still recognize me at a glance. Your skin is really thick. It's comparable to the capital's city walls." Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. He smiled proudly. Regardless of what she said, he slowly put away the mask in his hand. "All right, actually I guessed it was you because of the red mole on your ring finger. The first time I saw you, I felt inexplicably familiar. Later, when I saw you for the second time, I noticed your finger and made a bold guess. Finally, I confirmed that it was when you appeared in this forest." Higashio Motetsu's eyes were smiling as he listened to her slowly dissect him. "I just wandered around in front of the guards. You should have received the news. If you are Dongting, you should be able to guess what I am doing out here in the middle of the night. Then, you should show up and meet this old friend of mine." As soon as she finished speaking, Dongting Wangyu clapped her hands and praised. "You are indeed the witty and intelligent little girl on the battlefield. You only used a little trick to lure me out." "Don't give me that." He knew that she went to the battlefield, but she was a little surprised that he actually knew what happened to her on the battlefield. However, she didn't ask him about it. Instead, she changed the topic. "How have you been recently? Why did you come here?" Hearing this, Higashio Motetsu slowly lowered his eyes. His eyes flashed with a strange emotion. Some words were on the tip of his tongue, but he couldn't say them out loud. He smiled faintly, and his tone was still as flippant as before. "I have nothing to do, so I wandered around when I was bored." "You're really unrestrained." Her heart moved, and she suppressed the thoughts in her mind. She joked, "Speaking of which, if I didn't recognize you, did you plan to not recognize me? Since I'm here, of course it's to see you. Otherwise, why would I let myself suffer like this?" He leaned against the parasol tree in front of her and sighed. He spoke as if he had been wronged. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up slightly. So he appeared beside Xiao Ran, because he wanted to take the opportunity to see her? Higashio Motetsu glanced at her, and took in her expression. He took out the folding fan at his waist and fanned himself, covering the changing expression on his face. I've been in the capital for a while. I wanted to find a chance to see you, but you didn't go out. I wanted to visit your manor, but I was worried about your jealous fiancé. After thinking about it, I decided to forget about it. The day before yesterday, I heard that you were coming to Hugua Temple, so I made some arrangements. That's why I have today's identity. Hearing him speak with assurance, Chu Qingyan's smile didn't change, but the smile in her eyes faded. Chapter 1095. When Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows again, she sneered. It seems that I have to thank you for your deep affection for me, and apologize for not going out these days. Did you go through so much trouble to arrange this reunion? Higashio Motetsu chuckled. We're close friends. You don't have to treat me like an outsider. I'm just giving you some color, and you're starting a dye house. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes again, then straightened up and stood still on the ground. She asked, How long do you plan to stay here? Are you going to chase me away as soon as I come? Higashio Motetsu squeezed out a pitiful expression, as if he didn't know how to read people. Chu Qingyan was amused by his wacky look. She shook her head. You're the young palace master of a famous sect in the pugilistic world. Is it really okay for others to see you like this? A real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. I don't care about trifles, he said rather proudly. Chu Qingyan really wanted to ignore such a thick-skinned person, but she remembered something. Oh right, Xiao also came to the capital. She and I want to open a shop in the capital to promote the continuation of our products. This is a gathering place for high officials and nobles. As long as one of us comes to buy the so-called Golden Cave, it will spread faster than Jiangnan. When the time comes, the money will roll in. Seeing her eyes flash with money and immersed in the joy of making money, Higashio Motetsu's gaze couldn't help but soften a little, and the devilish aura on his body faded a little. So the purpose of you telling me all this is to catch me as a strong man? Chu Qingyan blinked. Then her eyes curved into crescents as she pretended to smile. How is this catching a strong man? I'm making money together with everyone. Don't think of me as such a cunning person. Higashio Motetsu smiled, his almond-shaped eyes overflowing with beauty. I haven't forgotten why you dragged me into the sea back then. Poor me, the young palace master who usually doesn't look at the account books and should live like a prince, but I have to run for my life with you. Don't you feel that you owe me? Chu Qingyan said grumpily. If there's money to be made, I'll share it with you, and you're actually complaining? Forget it, I don't care if you want this opportunity or not. If you miss this opportunity, you won't get another one. Don't come crying to me when the time comes. Looking at her angry face, Dongting Wangyu became absent-minded for a moment. It added a touch of liveliness to her pretty face. It had been more than half a year since they last met. He realized that every time they met, she would always bring him surprises. 15 years old was the age when one was as green as a flower. She was like a budding flower, slowly opening her petals. At this time, she hadn't truly bloomed, but her stunning appearance was already revealed. Regardless of whether she was wearing a servant's outfit or an ordinary one, it was difficult to conceal the brilliance that radiated from her body. All right, then I won't interfere with your opening ceremony. But if you need help, you can ask me for help at any time, he said with a smile in his eyes. These words made Chu Qingyan's eyes flash slightly, but under the cover of the night, Higashio Motetsu didn't notice. She revealed a look of disdain. Forget it. You shouldn't have been in the capital for long. What extra ability do you have to help me? It's more practical for me to ask His Highness for help. Higashio Motetsu shrugged. You said it yourself. When the time comes, don't blame me for not helping you. Humph, I won't, alright. Just as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she heard Jasper's voice. Master, someone's coming. She and Higashio Motetsu looked at each other. It looks like I have to leave first. See you again when I have time. After saying this, she waved at Jasper and immediately left the small forest. Higashio Motetsu looked in the direction that she disappeared. In the dark night, his cynical smile slowly faded. Before coming, he had planned to have an open and honest talk with her. He knew that what she disliked the most was deception. But when he saw her, he forgot his original intention. In other words, he subconsciously didn't want to tell her so soon. There were some things that you could maintain on the surface. Once it was broken, it would be hard to restore it to its original state. She was a person who dared to love and hate. She didn't ask for absolute honesty from her friends, but she didn't allow any flaws or deceit in their friendship. But if he had to choose between delaying the death of 1,000 cuts or immediately cutting off their relationship, he was willing to hide the truth. If she found out one day, he would have no complaints or regrets. He was a person who never did things that he regretted. Facing the night wind, his phoenix eyes rippled. When he took a closer look, his devilish smile returned. He raised his hand to wipe his face and returned to that ordinary young man. He lifted his foot and left unhurriedly. Chu Qingyan and her servant, who were walking back quickly, hadn't reached their room yet when they saw Xiao Ran standing at the door talking to Xining. Chu Qingyan and Jasper looked at each other. She immediately said, "Go in through the window." Quietly avoiding everyone's gaze, Jasper opened the window and nimbly jumped in. After confirming that it was safe, she turned around and nodded to her master. Chu Qingyan nodded, and also jumped into the room. "Your master went to bed so early?" Xiao Ran stood in front of Xining with a box of food in his hand. He was a little disappointed. Yes, maybe he's tired from the journey, so he went to bed early. After Xining finished answering, her palms were sweaty. Why wasn't master back yet? At this time, a clear voice came from the room. "Xining, who are you talking to outside?" Xining's eyes lit up and she immediately said, "It's His Highness the Fourth Prince." Xiaoren also recognized her voice and quickly said, "Qingyan, it's me. I brought you something." At this time the door opened. Chu Qingyan stood at the door and said with a smile, "So it's you. I was wondering who would come over so late at night." When Xiao Ran saw her smiling in front of him, he was a little dazed for a moment. But he didn't forget the purpose of his visit, and handed the box of food in his hand to her. "I took this from Imperial Mother. I've already eaten it and it tastes really good. I wanted to give it to you to try." Chu Qingyan took it, and then handed it to Xining. She thanked Xiao Ran. "You're really a good friend. You even thought of me. Then I won't be polite and accept it." "No need to be so polite. Well, since you're preparing to sleep, I won't disturb you. Have a good rest. It's been a tiring journey." Xiao Ran didn't know where to put his hands. He raised his hand to touch his nose and smiled shyly. He waved his hand and went back the way he came. Chu Qingyan watched Xiao Ran's receding figure, and the words that Xiao Li said to her before echoed in her mind. The smile on her face slowly disappeared. With Xiao Li's reminder, although she didn't take it to heart, she still heard it. Now that she saw how much he cared about her, the balance in her heart couldn't help but tilt toward Xiao Li's words. She restrained her expression, and her eyes were as clear as water. She hoped that she and Xiao Ran were just friends, and that there weren't any other feelings that shouldn't be mixed. Chapter 1096. When the door was closed again, Jasper walked to the center of the room with a puzzled look on her face. "Master, who was the person you saw in the forest just now?" Chu Qingyan replied, "Higashio Motetsu, the young palace master of the Moon Palace. He previously cooperated with me and Xiuli in Jiangnan." Jasper suddenly understood. She had heard of this person in Jiangnan, but she had not been by her master's side at that time, so she had only heard of his name, but had never seen him in person. Xining looked surprised. "Young Master Dongting is also here?" "Yes." Chu Qingyan nodded, but the smile on her face was very faint. From their conversation just now, it seemed that he was hiding something from her, and did not tell her the truth. This made her feel a little strange. Seeing that her master was not very interested, Xining did not ask any more questions. Instead, she opened the food box that Xiao Ran had brought over, and saw that there were red and green pastries inside. It was very beautiful. "Master, do you want to try the pastries?" "I think I'll pass. You can eat if you want, but you have to test for poison first," Chu Qingyan instructed. Once bitten, twice shy. The first time she had gone to the gates of hell, she had relied on the pastries that Xiao Ran had brought out from the palace. Now that this food box had been brought over from his imperial mother, she did not dare to try it. If she had to go to the gates of hell for a day again, and did not come back, it would be terrible. Master is right. We still have to be careful here, Xining said seriously. Chu Qingyan smiled then said, You've been busy all day. Rest early. The two nodded. After changing out of her clothes and lying on the bed, Chu Qingyan felt a little tired. However, her mental strength was still sufficient, and she was unable to fall asleep immediately. In such a quiet place, she felt that her mood was also affected. Her heart was calm, and many things that she had thought of or not thought of appeared in her mind. She recalled the first time she met Dong Ting. It was he who broke into the Wang mansion and held her hostage. At that time, she only thought that this man had a pair of eyes that were prettier than a girl's. The second time they met, he was still holding her hostage in order to hide from her people. He was the first to recognize her. Later on, her memories jumped to the time when he helped her find the herb. Then his identity was exposed. She realized that she had been deceived and broke off all relations with him. Later on, when they met again many years later, she realized that she didn't hold such a deep grudge against him. Perhaps it was because the pure persistence of friendship was still no match for the corrosion of the beautiful memories of the past. With her hands behind her head, she looked at the Zen character hanging on the wall. Her gaze suddenly became distant. Dongting, I hope you won't disappoint me again. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that those memories will make me forgive your betrayal. After closing her eyes, the night went on until dawn. Master, today we are going to the hall to listen to scriptures and Buddha chants. Xining helped her tidy up her clothes as she reported today's itinerary. Chu Qingyan instantly drooped her head. Since young, I have listened to countless lectures and meetings. I thought I had gotten rid of them, but I didn't expect that I still couldn't avoid them. I don't know how long I will have to listen to them this time. Jasper replied. I heard that it will be at least 3 days. Chu Qingyan withered in the wind. 3 days? Because there were morning classes in the temple, everyone rushed to the hall without eating breakfast after they woke up. Good morning to all the benefactresses. Please sit. An eminent monk with white eyebrows sat under the Buddha statue and kindly said to everyone. Chu Qingyan found a seat near the door and sat down. She glanced around and found that most of the people had already arrived. Even Empress Liang was already sitting below the eminent monk, with her 2 nieces by her side. She turned to Xining behind her and said in a low voice, Jasper can stay here. You are free to go and find your Jin Xian. Master. Xining's face turned red. I know that he is in charge of the security around the hall today. Go quickly. You can't miss this opportunity. Chu Qingyan winked at her. Even Jasper couldn't help but laugh. Xining stomped her feet and ran out. She shook her head. Look, this girl still can't wait to see her Jin Xian. This shows that although she said no, her body is still very honest. Jasper said seriously. This subordinate thinks that Xining was scared away. Chu Qingyan blinked. Jasper, sometimes you still need to be humorous. Otherwise, you will embarrass people. Jasper replied seriously. This subordinate understands. This subordinate will not casually embarrass Master in the future. 3 black lines slid down her forehead. Chu Qingyan decided to ignore her this morning. At this moment, everyone was focused on the eminent monks chanting in order to show that they were devoted to Buddhism. No one noticed her in the corner. Thus, she closed her eyes and pretended to listen attentively. In fact, she was already playing chess with Zhou Gong. After some time, she felt a light piercing her body and her arm being gently shaken. She couldn't take it anymore and woke up from her sleep. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw countless pairs of eyes staring at her. Some were gloating, some were watching, some were confused, and some were looking at her with disdain. She suddenly woke up. At this moment, she turned her head to look beside her. It was actually Yu Tianyue. She only heard her whisper, Sister Chu, Reverend is asking you a question. At this moment Meng Shirshu sneered. Miss Chu, Reverend called you so many times, but you didn't even respond. Could it be that you fell asleep? These words caused the Empress to reveal displeasure. Her cold gaze swept towards Chu Qingyan. Consort Yu at the side covered her mouth with a handkerchief and snickered as she watched the show. Chu Qingyan immediately entered battle mode. Ignoring Meng Shishu's ridicule, she turned to the eminent monk sitting at the head and blamed herself. Reverend, I'm sorry. I was too engrossed in your chanting just now and didn't hear you call me. Please forgive me. Benefactor Chu doesn't need to be so polite. To be able to make Benefactor Chu enter a state of selflessness, it can be seen that you have faith with our Buddhism. The eminent monk's Buddhist name was Shen Kong. Shen Kong smiled and looked at her, speaking neither quickly nor slowly. When Chu Qingyan heard this, she blushed with shame and hurriedly smiled. At this moment she asked softly, Tianyue, what's going on? Just now, Her Majesty the Empress and Reverend were discussing Buddhism. Reverend asked a question that no one could answer, so Her Majesty Consort Yu recommended you. She said that you were very smart. Back then, Reverend Su Jian wanted you to shave your head and become a Buddhist monk, so you should definitely be able to answer this question. Yu Tianyue stared straight ahead, and only her lips moved. In a few short sentences, she quickly explained the reason. The corners of Chu Qingyan's eyes twitched. Why was it that everywhere she went, there were people who wanted to set traps for her? She had to admit that wherever there were people, there would be jianghu. This was especially true for these beauties of the imperial harem, who were born as officials and nobles. Wherever they were, there would be a palace struggle. Benefactor, are you ready? Shen Kong asked with a smile. Chu Qingyan smiled insincerely. Reverend, please ask. Chapter 1097. Shen Kong nodded and pointed behind him, then slowly said, Almsgiver Chu, please take a look. Chu Qingyan raised her head, and saw that the people around her were all looking at her like she was a joke. She calmed herself down and finally turned towards the direction Shen Kong was pointing at. A candle. At this moment, a gust of wind blew over and the candle flame swayed left and right. Almsgiver Chu, do you think it's the wind or the candle flame that's moving? Shen Kong asked with a smile. This question? Chu Qingyan's ears twitched. She didn't hear wrongly, right? Wasn't this the same question she had seen in the reading comprehension questions she did in high school? She was wild with joy in her heart and tears streamed down her face. It was really a blind cat running into a dead mouse. No one was able to answer this question just now. It's normal if Miss Chu can't answer it. Jing Mingzhu's tone was as gentle as water, but there was a hint of mockery in her eyes. Meng Shishu looked up from the side. Is Miss Jing questioning Consort Yu's words? Jing Mingzhu was stunned. She almost forgot that Chu Qingyan was recommended by Consort Yu. She shouldn't have blurted out that sentence just now. She glared at Meng Shishu angrily. She clearly didn't mean it that way, but she misinterpreted it. She didn't know what Consort Yu would think of her if she heard this. And Meng Shishu actually used her to put pressure on Chu Qingyan. How infuriating. Jing Mingzhu tore at her handkerchief angrily. Chu Qingyan sneered in her heart. She didn't mind these two fighting amongst themselves, but she couldn't let it go when it involved her. She would deal with them later. She didn't pay attention to their words and thought for a moment before looking up and replying politely to Master Shen Kong. Master, Qingyan feels that the wind didn't move and the candle flame didn't move. It's our hearts that moved. It's because our hearts moved that we felt the scenery in front of us move. Master Shen Kong's smiling eyes brightened when he heard this. Then he laughed out loud. Almsgiver Chu is indeed fated with our Dharma. Our hearts have indeed been moved. Those who wanted to see Chu Qingyan make a fool of herself were surprised to hear her answer. Although Empress Liang didn't like Chu Qingyan, she was in a good mood because Chu Qingyan had made her proud and made Consort Yu's plan fail. It was rare for her to be satisfied with Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan felt the gazes from all directions. She smiled faintly and accepted it calmly. She wanted to set a trap for her and laugh at her? No way. Consort Yu wanted to see her make a fool of herself, but she didn't expect Chu Qingyan to be able to resolve it. She frowned and regained her composure. She smiled faintly as if everything had nothing to do with her. At this moment, Master Shen Kong continued the topic from before. Humans usually have hearts move according to their state. This means that they are easily disturbed by the outside world. However, Dharma emphasizes on hearts move according to their state. This means that they don't feel sad or happy because of the outside world. They use a normal heart to face the joys and sorrows of the world, birth, old age, sickness, and death. They don't force things, don't compare themselves, don't bother about gains and losses, and be a person who doesn't care about worldly affairs. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that Master Shen Kong was no longer paying attention to her and knew that she had successfully passed. However, she still couldn't be careless and had to be vigilant. Who knew if these people would take advantage of her inattention and dig a hole for her again? At this moment, someone lightly tugged at the corner of her clothes. She turned around and saw Yu Tianyue with a face full of admiration. Big Sister Chu, you're simply too amazing. Is there anything that you don't understand? Chu Qingyan blinked her eyes. I think it's just blind luck. Don't move around. Otherwise you'll be called out later. Yu Tianyue immediately sat upright and still, looking straight ahead. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but smile. When she retracted her gaze, she saw Qilingi beside Yu Tianyue. She saw her smiling slightly at her. Chu Qingyan also returned a smile, and then listened seriously to the lecture. At this moment, Qilingi only saw Chu Qingyan's side profile. Although she couldn't see her entire face, just this side profile alone was enough to make men infatuated and women feel inferior. This kind of talented and beautiful woman. How could she ever hope to reach the heights that she had reached? She felt extremely lonely and was absent-minded as she listened to the lecture. At this moment, the person lying on the tall tree facing the main hall's window was leisurely looking at the people in the hall. To be more accurate, he was only paying attention to Chu Qingyan. Higashio Motetsu admired the way she had to seriously listen to the lecture even though she was bored to death. It was rare to see her like this. When he returned, he had to properly laugh at her. However, he placed his elbow on the tree trunk and rested his chin on his palm. His gaze became deep. This little girl was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. He had seen countless people over the years, but he had rarely seen a girl who had the agility of a fairy, the charm of 100 flowers, and the tenacity of pine and cypress. He couldn't help raising the corners of his eyes. This kind of little girl, when those people in power saw her strength, they would probably regret betrothing her to Xiao Su. Seeing her pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger, it was very interesting. Halfway through his smile, he suddenly stopped smiling. But in the near future, he and her would have to face each other with swords. He raised his head and faced the sunlight through the gaps in the leaves. Finally, he raised his hand and slowly covered his eyes. After the morning lecture, it was time for breakfast. Everyone returned to their own rooms to eat. Chu Qingyan stood up and stretched. Just as she was about to leave, she saw Master Shen Kong walking towards her slowly. She immediately stopped what she was doing and clasped her hands together in greeting. Master. Benefactor Chu doesn't need to be so polite. Master Shen Kong smiled very amiably. This poor monk doesn't have any other matters. This poor monk just feels that Benefactor Chu is someone who has fate with Buddhism, so this poor monk wants to speak with Benefactor Chu. Will this cause Benefactor any trouble? No, it is Qingyan's honor to be able to receive Master's good graces. Chu Qingyan was a bit flattered. Even though she didn't understand why the Master was looking for her, she still hurriedly replied. Benefactor Chu, you don't need to be nervous. Please follow this poor monk. Master Shen Kong nodded with a slight smile, and then gestured to the side. Chu Qingyan nodded and followed him with Jasper towards the bamboo forest in the courtyard. This poor monk has recently been pondering over the words cause and effect cycle. Does Benefactor Chu have any thoughts on this? Cause and effect cycle? Chu Qingyan quietly thought for a moment, and then said uncertainly, Qingyan hasn't studied much about Buddhism. If I have any opinions, I'm afraid that Master won't be interested. Benefactor Chu can speak freely. Buddhism has no limits. Master Shen Kong said. Chu Qingyan nodded. In Qingyan's opinion, the cause and effect cycle is just a cycle of kindness and resentment, grievance and enmity. Good karma begets good karma. What you give to life, life will give back to you. It's like the effect of force is mutual. Perhaps you won't be able to receive a response immediately, but over time, it will appear in front of you in any way. Master Shen Kong glanced at her and nodded. Chapter 1098. Master Shen Kong brought her to a stone table and invited her to sit down. Benefactor Chu's point of view is very unique, but it is still similar to the karma of the 3 lives that we talk about in Buddhism. Past death, present life and future life are all due to the 6 paths of reincarnation. After the 2 of them sat down, he said with a smile, "Qingyan is just saying whatever comes to mind. I've embarrassed myself in front of Master. In front of an eminent monk, especially such a benevolent-looking old man." Chu Qingyan's tone was respectful. "Benefactor Chu is too polite. This poor monk heard that you came to the capital 5 years ago. Now that you've returned, what are your thoughts?" This question made her feel a little confused, but when she met Master Shen Kong's kind gaze, she did not feel any malice. On the contrary, it was as if she saw benevolence and pity in his puffy eyes. Her heart stirred. "When I first came to the capital 5 years ago, I was very fearful. I was filled with apprehension towards the unknown people and things. Now that I've returned, my attitude is completely different from before. Perhaps it's because I have something to rely on or my own ability is enough to have a place here. But," Chu Qingyan looked at the master with a helpless expression, "I feel that I don't belong in this kind of place where power is concentrated. This place is like a cage. Those who don't want to fight, those who don't want to pay attention to, will all have an invisible hand pushing them from behind. Master, how do you think we should escape from this kind of situation?" Master Shen Kong nodded, his voice aged but not lacking in sincerity. "Many things are predestined. Before Benefactor Chu appeared, the heavens had already arranged it. Your appearance has broken some balance. Just like what Benefactor Chu said just now, perhaps you won't get a response immediately, but as time passes, it will appear in front of you in any way. So running away is not a solution. Let nature take its course. When the conditions are right, success will come naturally." When Chu Qingyan heard his words, she felt as though she had been enlightened. But between the lines of his words, she seemed to smell something. Could it be that because of her appearance, some order was affected and the balance was tilted, causing some things to change? She suddenly recalled what Su Jian had said to her and asked anxiously, "Master, do you have any advice for Qingyan?" Master Shen Kong fiddled with the Buddha beads in his hand and faintly smiled. "Benefactor is a wise and enlightened person. There is no need for this poor monk to guide you. As long as you follow your heart and have kindness in your heart, you will be able to obtain kindness." At this time, Master Shen Kong had already left the courtyard and was walking in the forest. The monk following beside him asked puzzledly, "Martial uncle, is there anything special about that almsgiver Chu? Why do you want to personally guide her? And can she understand what you're saying?" "Regardless of whether I understand it or not, I have already fulfilled my duty. As for the reason, the secrets of heaven cannot be revealed." Master Shen Kong closed his eyes and chanted Amitabha. After Master Shen Kong left, Chu Qingyan still sat in the same place, concentrating on the meaning of what he said just now. What did it mean to follow one's heart? What did it mean to seek benevolence and obtain benevolence only by harboring benevolence in one's heart? She seemed to have touched upon some clues, but when she thought deeper, it seemed like she did not understand anything. She could not help but feel a little depressed. Suddenly, the wind blew the leaves and the cool breeze carried away the scorching heat in the air. Right after, it was accompanied by the faint fragrance of lotus flowers. She raised her eyebrows slightly. This scent seemed a little familiar. The rustling of the leaves was like playing a clear and melodious tune. Hearing it was very soothing to the ears. She seemed to have sensed something and raised her eyes to look at the bamboo forest on her right. A slender and straight figure was slowly walking over under the cover of the bamboo leaves. Every step seemed to be stepping on a lotus flower. Every step gave birth to a lotus flower. The fragrance of the lotus lingered. With white as the background, the stripes crisscrossed. His plain clothes set off his indifferent brows and eyes, like a walking clear jade. However, his eyes carried neither joy nor sorrow, as if there was nothing in the world that could move his emotions and disturb his heart. Chu Qingyan slowly curved her eyes, the joy of reunion rippling in her heart. "It's been many years since we last met. How have you been? The white-clothed monk stood not too far away from her. His eyes were like a painting and the corners of his mouth lifted. Benefactor Chu, this poor monk greets you. Chu Qingyan chuckled. We haven't seen each other for so long, so why are you still so polite? We've experienced many things together, and can be considered acquaintances. Looking at you, you still treat me as an ordinary believer. Su Jian smiled faintly, a little surprised. That's true. But why is Benefactor Chu here? It's like this. The Empress wants to pray for rain for the common people, so we came with her to Hugua Temple. This matter has caused such a big commotion, but you didn't know? Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Su Jian understood. These matters are all handled by Marshal Uncle Abbot and the others. I usually don't care about these things. That's a pity. I've heard that many women came here for you. She spread her hands, expressing regret. Su Jian frowned. Benefactor Chu, you can't joke about this. What I'm saying is that they came here to preach scriptures to you. You're thinking too much, aren't you? Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and chuckled. Su Jian was helpless against her mischievous nature. Back to the topic. You did me a big favor in Jiang Kingdom last time, and I haven't thanked you properly. After this prayer is over, how about I treat you to a meal? Chu Qingyan straightened her back and invited him sincerely. Only then did Su Jian remember what she was referring to. He said nonchalantly, You don't have to be so polite. Back then, this penniless monk only did a small favor. His Royal Highness was not destined to die. To you, it was a small favor, but to us, it was a favor as heavy as a mountain. You can't refuse this gratitude. Otherwise, I won't be able to rest in peace for the rest of my life. Aren't you Buddhist disciples all merciful? Can't you bear to let me remember this for the rest of my life without relief? Chu Qingyan was very distressed and looked at him anxiously. Su Jian couldn't find a reason to refute her twisted logic, so he couldn't help but admire her eloquence once again. Since that's the case, this penniless monk will accept deferentially, but, before he could finish speaking, she interrupted him. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and said, I know. I don't touch meat or drink alcohol. Don't worry, it's not like I don't know your strict rules. I guarantee that you'll only have vegetarian dishes and good tea. Su Jian smiled faintly when he heard this. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes and said to him, Sit, sit, sit. We haven't chatted in a long time. Su Jian glanced at her suspiciously. In the past, whenever he saw her, he wanted to say more to her, but she would be impatient, as if he was trying to mislead her with his lies. Now that she took the initiative to invite him, he smelled something unusual. However, he didn't mind it too much. He sat down and looked at her with clear eyes. Almsgiver Chu, if there's anything you want to ask, feel free to ask. She didn't expect him to see through her thoughts. Since he was going straight to the point, she wouldn't beat around the bush. Su Jian, did you appear in Jiang Kingdom back then because of official business, or because you predicted that we would be in danger? Chapter 1099. As soon as Chu Qingyan said this, Su Jian couldn't help but stare at her. What does Almsgiver Chu want to ask? This person actually knew how to avoid her words. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. Since they were both smart people, she would just get straight to the point. I want to know if you can really predict a person's fate. Su Jian smiled faintly. I can predict fortune and disaster, but it's very shallow. I can't predict everything accurately. Chu Qingyan shook her head. That's not necessarily the case. Since you can appear in the Jiang Kingdom, it means that you're very confident in your divination. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come all the way from Sichuan to the Jiang Kingdom. Su Jian raised his eyebrows. He wanted to say something, but she interrupted him again. Don't say that it's all a coincidence. In the past, many emperors from other countries invited you, but you rejected them all. However, you agreed to come to the Jiang Kingdom. Don't tell me that it's fate. I don't believe it. Chu Qingyan propped her chin up with both hands. She looked like she was saying that his explanation was just an excuse. Su Jian chuckled and shook his head. She had actually guessed what he wanted to say. Almsgiver Chu, you're really smart. Chu Qingyan shrugged. Many people praise me for being smart, but most of them want to harm me or kill me. Which category do you belong to? This penniless monk doesn't belong to anything. Su Jian was stunned by the frankness in her words. He sighed and was somewhat puzzled. She didn't beat around the bush and looked at him seriously. Su Jian, you monks don't lie. Since that's the case, tell me. Back then, you said that my appearance affected the King of England's fate. To what extent will it affect his fate? Will it be beneficial or harmful? What kind of waves will his life be in the future? And what kind of fate will I have? If she was in the modern world, she wouldn't be able to ask such a question. However, after everything that had happened, she suddenly felt a sense of awe towards the invisible hand of fate. As long as it was related to the ice cube, she would rather believe it was true. Because she was too eager, her questions came one after another. Su Jian slowly put away the smile on his face and looked at her expressionlessly. Almsgiver Chu, the future is unpredictable. If this penniless monk tells you, it will change the trajectory of its development. Then even if you know, it will be the same as not knowing. Since that was the case, why did he have to insist? He might as well let nature take its course. Do you agree with what this penniless monk said? Chu Qingyan snorted. That's all nonsense. It seems that you usually use such arguments to fool the masses. Su Jian's emotions did not fluctuate because of her words. He was still as calm as ever. No matter what almsgiver thinks, this penniless monk can only stop here. All right, I'll change the topic. Chu Qingyan sighed deeply. Negotiating with such a stubborn person was asking for trouble. She sorted out her emotions and asked seriously, do you still remember that when we first met 5 years ago, you wanted me to join Buddhism? I want to know the real reason. Other than you knowing my identity, what other important factors are there? Otherwise, with your identity as an enlightened monk, you wouldn't casually want to take in a disciple just because you saw someone on the street. This matter is related to me. I don't want you to use some heavenly secret that can't be revealed to fool me again. She had guessed what he wanted to say. Su Jian lowered his head in thought, unable to give her an answer for the time being. He could not tell her that there were several reasons why he wanted to take her in as a disciple. Some were related to the world, some were related to her, and some were related to himself. Seeing him like this, she knew that it would not be easy to pry open his mouth. She was secretly anxious. Got it. Didn't these people claim to be benevolent? Then she could make good use of them. Thus, she secretly reached out and pinched her thigh hard. Tears welled up in her eyes like a tide. She looked at him with teary eyes. Su Jian, tell me, is it because I'm a scourge? Is that why you want to take me in and take good care of me? Su Jian heard her crying and raised his head in surprise. What he saw was her tear-stained face. He was used to her calmness and stubbornness. When he suddenly saw her crying like a weak girl, he was more shocked than suspicious. It's not as serious as you say. You're not a scourge. Not so serious? Not a scourge? Didn't that mean she was a scourge? She sobbed and whimpered. Then why? Could it be that I don't have long to live, and it's not easy to survive in this world? So you want to borrow the light of Buddhism to save my life? That's not entirely true. Su Jian was at a loss for what to do with her appearance. Chu Qingyan secretly twitched her mouth. No way, she was a short-lived ghost? She suddenly did not want to ask any more questions. Otherwise, she was a short-lived scourge, a femme fatale. Su Jian saw the tears hanging from her eyelashes, and her expression changing unpredictably. He was a little puzzled. Almsgiver Chu, are you all right? Chu Qingyan immediately started wailing again. So you're saying that there's no hope for me? That I'm going to die soon? Jasper, who was standing guard not far away, could not help but avert her gaze at the sound of her crying. Master, your crying is too realistic. Su Jian panicked when he heard this. Although he had walked the world for so many years and had seen many people of all ages cry, none of them made him feel uneasy. You can't say that. Although in the beginning, this penniless monk calculated that you would not live past the age of 10, after you left the capital, your fate changed. At least, the great calamity of your life has been resolved. That year, she should have returned to her original place, but Xiao Su had blocked an arrow for her, resolving her life and death situation. Tracing back to the past, Xiao had been wrongly imprisoned. It was she who had resolved his crisis and pulled him back from the gates of hell. Therefore, when the two of them were supposed to die, they managed to turn the situation around. Their fates had already exceeded the scope of his divination. At this moment, even his master or martial uncle couldn't divine what kind of fate these two people would have in the future. However, no matter what happened in the future, their fates were tied together and could not be separated. With this answer, Chu Qingyan finally felt relieved. Fortunately, she was not a beauty with an unlucky life. Otherwise, her life would have been in vain. However, she still had one more worry. Thank you for answering my question. Her tears glistened as she expressed her sincere gratitude. But all this time, I've been worried about something and I'm begging you to help me. Su Jian looked troubled, but seeing her pitiful look, he sighed softly and said, Ask away. When I came here, I wasn't prepared and no one told me how long I would be here. Can you tell me if I will suddenly leave? No one could understand what she was saying except for Su Jian, who was present. For the past 5 years, she had been trembling in fear and unease. She was afraid that she would suddenly return to the modern world as if she had suddenly transmigrated here. This kind of worry and pain was indescribable. She did not have the heart to tell Big Ice for fear of adding to his worries. She could only bear it silently. Chapter 1100. At this moment, seeing Su Jian reminded her of what had happened before. It was as if she had grasped at a life-saving straw, and she desperately wanted to know the answer. Su Jian looked at her anxious and worried expression, and gently shook his head. It's not that this penniless monk is holding back from you, but this penniless monk can no longer predict your future. Perhaps my ability is too shallow. Master had once told him that just like how a doctor couldn't treat himself, he couldn't divine his own fortune either. This also confirmed Master's words. She was his calamity. However, he didn't understand what kind of calamity she would bring upon him. Yet, Master hadn't revealed anything from the beginning to the end. This made him very confused. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. Even you, the Sichuan's most powerful charlatan, oh no, a slip of the tongue, the most powerful senior monk, can't divine my future. Then I don't think anyone else in this world has the ability to do so. Su Jian looked at her. Didn't you say before that your fate is up to you and not the heavens? Since that's the case, why are you still clinging to your fate? Chu Qingyan's body stiffened. This guy really knew how to draw inferences from one instance. Ahem, all right. You're right. I really shouldn't be clinging to my fate. Anyway, I'll deal with whatever comes my way. There's nothing to be afraid of. At most, I'll be a good man again in 20 years. Su Jian saw that she had quickly wiped away her tears and returned to her peach blossom cheeks. He couldn't help but agree with the saying that a woman could change her face faster than the weather. All right, since that's the case, I won't disturb you any further. Anyway, we're in the same temple, so it won't be difficult to meet each other. After settling her business, she felt that her stomach was empty. It was time to eat. This penniless monk will be in the temple these days. If there's anything you need, you can send someone to inform me. All right. Su Jian watched as she stood up and waved at him in midair. Then, he called his maidservant and leisurely turned to leave. He smiled softly, then looked perplexed. What exactly did his calamity represent? Jasper followed behind her with a puzzled expression. Mistress, who is this master? This person is called Su Jian. He is an eminent monk who became famous at a young age. I heard that when he was born, there was a flash of Buddha's light. He was very smart from a young age, and could understand the Dharma with just a hint. This made many eminent monks sigh with admiration. Thus he entered Buddhism at a young age. As he grew older, his pure, handsome, and abstinent appearance like a lotus flower was greatly sought after by many married and unmarried women. He could be said to exist in the hearts of the Sichuan people, like a god of Buddhism. This was the investigation she had done on him previously, who asked him to keep persuading her to enter Buddhism. However, after knowing his background, she couldn't help but admire such a powerful person. So it's him. Although this subordinate has always been in Jiangnan, I've still heard of his name. Even the kings of other countries treat him with respect. His status is not to be underestimated. Jasper thought of the information she had collected in the past and nodded. Chu Qingyan blinked. Looking at Su Jian's dull appearance, she really didn't know why everyone respected him so much. I can see that he is indeed very popular. This might have something to do with the people's belief in God. Jasper nodded, but she looked puzzled. Then why did Mistress take the initiative to get close to Master Su Jian? This wasn't Mistress's style. Chu Qingyan thought for a moment and said frankly, Su Jian helped me and Her Highness before. We owe him a debt of gratitude, so I wanted to make friends with him. However, there is another important reason, and that is that he has the ability to predict the future. This is a cheat. Perhaps he can be of help in the future. This subordinate understands. Jasper nodded. From afar, she saw Xining looking around. When she saw them, she immediately ran over. Mistress, this servant has finally found you. Chu Qingyan smiled. How was your date with your family's Jean Xian? Xining glared at her innocently. You're making fun of us. No, it's something serious. Mistress, Her Majesty the Empress is looking for you. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows slightly. Why was Empress Liang looking for her at this time? However, she hadn't been able to find a chance to show her face in front of the Empress. When the time came, she would have a chance to mention her parents. All right, let's go. After walking around for a while, Chu Qingyan finally arrived at the courtyard where Empress Liang was staying. Before she even stepped in, she could already hear a woman's laughter. She paused in her steps and listened intently. It seemed like there were quite a lot of people here. This was probably going to be a tough battle. She stretched her muscles and tidied up her makeup, then walked towards the door. Under the scorching heat, on the road where there were few people, a horse carriage was moving forward. It was surrounded by tall men riding on horses. They were constantly watching their surroundings and were very cautious. Inside the horse carriage, a young woman was lying on the cushion in a very uncomfortable position. Beside her sat a handsome and gentle man. He was holding a cup of tea in his hand and was calmly sipping it. Although the horse carriage wasn't slow, it didn't feel any bumps. It was as if it was on flat ground. The young woman who was quietly sleeping finally groaned because her position was not right. She slowly opened her eyes. What entered her eyes was a black lump. She blinked, and when her vision cleared, she was shocked to find that it was a pair of men's boots. She immediately jumped up, but because she hadn't moved for an entire night, her body was stiff. Before she could react, her bones and tendons made a bung-bung sound. She froze in midair, and then fell towards the wall of the carriage. Her entire body was in a very comical position as she intimately touched the wall of the carriage. This fall was really painful. While she was mourning her chin, she heard a low mocking laugh. Only then did she react. There was still a culprit sitting in the carriage, so she immediately entered a state of high alert. She turned her head and saw Xiao dressed in a refined moon-white brocade robe, looking like a young master from a noble family. In contrast, her wrinkled clothes looked like they had been soaked in salted vegetables for an entire night. Her aura immediately decreased by a bit. He really was a hypocrite who pretended to be human. She stuck out her chest. She definitely couldn't let her aura lose even a bit. You're going too far. Letting a delicate girl lie on the ground while you're enjoying yourself. You don't have any gentlemanly manners at all. In any case, I'm still your partner. Can't you have a bit of cooperation? Xiao's attention shifted from the tea to the girl who called herself delicate, in front of him. He turned his hand and placed the teacup on the table, looking very serious. Forgive this king's poor eyesight, but I can't see how the princess is delicate. Moreover, the princess is sleeping on the ground because of your poor sleeping posture, so you can't blame anyone else. Although we are in a cooperative relationship, the power is still in this king's hands. The princess can only cooperate. For a girl, this kind of naked exposure was even more embarrassing than calling a girl fat. Peng Zhijing was so angry that she didn't know what to say. However, the other party did not let her go. He said with some difficulty, "Moreover, this king is still a patient. Shouldn't he treat himself better?" Peng Zhijing felt her blood boil. Chapter 1101. Pang Zhijing had to admit that talking to someone with a high IQ was just asking for humiliation. She decided not to bother with him anymore. Thus, she crossed her arms and sat on the other side of the couch, looking like she would never interact with him again. Xiao did not have much interest in her, but he felt that the journey was boring, so he played with the kitten that was sent to him to relieve his boredom. Seeing that she was no longer making a fuss, he treated her as if she was invisible. But this situation did not last long. Grumble, grumble. Pang Zhijing could not help but press her stomach. She had not eaten for 3 or 4 meals, so it would be strange if she was not hungry. It was too difficult to not hear this sound in this quiet carriage. Xiao glanced at her, and Pang Zhijing exploded, thinking that he was looking down on her. Have you never seen a hungry person before? But that's right, royal marquises like you, who live like princes, will not feel this. Xiao heard this and his eyes flashed, as if some unknown emotion floated and then sank. Pang Zhijing thought that she had seen wrongly, but then she saw him looking at her suspiciously. You speak as if you were not born in the palace. Princess, you haven't forgotten your identity, have you? Pang Zhijing was slightly stunned. She had let it slip, so she had to quickly cover it up. Of course I haven't forgotten my identity, but do you think that people who are glamorous on the surface are really living well? Everyone wants to squeeze into the palace, but is that a good place? Haha, it is simply a devil that eats people without spitting out the bones. Golden cages, volcanoes. Let's not talk about it. The feeling of being hungry and bullied in there, you will not understand. As she spoke, she could not help but put in her true feelings, because the original memories in her body kept surging up. Actually, this original body was also a person with a bitter life. Seeing the redness in her eyes, Xiao was silent for a while, and his expression was slightly restrained, no longer as gentle and amiable as before. There was an incomprehensible dark sadness. You are not me. How do you know that I don't understand? His voice was slightly stern, which made Pang Zhijing jump in fright. But after hearing his words clearly, she could not help but mutter in her heart. What did this person mean? However, before she could think about it, the person in front of her ordered, "Bring up the princess's food." She didn't hear any response from outside, but she could clearly feel that the carriage had slowed down. After a while, someone lifted the curtain and handed over a lunchbox. Pang Zhijing immediately took it. She had already prepared herself for a simple meal, but when she opened it and saw the exquisite dishes inside, her eyes lit up. She couldn't wait to pick up her chopsticks and enjoy it. At this time, Pang Zhijing's mind was filled with the food in front of her. Xiao, who was left to the side, looked at her wolfing down the food and raised his eyebrows slightly. This was the first time he saw a woman who didn't care about her image. If Pang Zhijing heard his ridicule, she would probably beat her chest and stomp her feet. Ever since she became this unlucky princess, she hadn't eaten a full meal. The reason was very simple. Pang Huang was afraid that she would have the strength to escape, so he specially controlled her food. In addition, she was always in a state of fear and planning to escape, so she didn't have the appetite to eat and drink. But now that she reached a consensus with Xiao, she was finally relieved, so her appetite was greatly stimulated. After being hungry for several days, her stomach finally had a full meal. When she was half full, Pang Zhijing also realized that her table manners were a little frightening. She couldn't help but sneak a glance at the person beside her, only to see him calmly sipping his tea and admiring her table manners. However, he didn't laugh at her because of this. Pang Zhijing pursed her lips. Whatever, nothing was more important than eating. Xiao sat quietly for a moment and suddenly said, I feel that you don't look like a princess. Her heart thumped, but she didn't show it on her face. She said in a bad mood, Does everyone's identity have to be written on their face and expressed through their actions? I think you don't look like a lord. Besides, if I'm not a princess, will you let me go? When she said the last sentence, there was a faint expectation in her tone. Xiao smiled faintly and said, We just need a princess. As for who she is, it's not within our scope of concern. These words are so heartless. She snorted softly, then seemed to have thought of something. Xiao, if I complete my mission, you can't go back on your words and let me go. Xiao smiled. Of course, but where do you want to go? At this moment, she swallowed the last mouthful of rice. Hearing that, she looked up with a smile in her eyes. You don't have to worry about that. Anyway, as long as I'm not restrained, even if I'm standing in front of you, I'll be free. The person in front of him had rice on the corner of her mouth, but she was smiling brightly. Her little face seemed to be glowing, making people unable to look straight at her. Xiao was silent. Freedom? It seemed that when he was very young, he had fantasized about it. Hello. Suddenly, there was an extra hand shaking in front of his eyes. He frowned and stepped back, looking at her with displeasure. What's the matter? Pang Zhijing was shocked by his reaction. I just saw that your face didn't look too good, so I approached you to show some concern. My good intentions really don't have good karma. She was about to step back when the carriage suddenly stopped. Her body couldn't help but lean forward, falling into his arms. She was stunned, and the smell of medicine hit her. He stiffened, the soft jade in his arms. And at this moment, before the two of them could react, they heard the sound of weapons clashing outside. In the King of England's residence, Hongyi looked at the people going in and out of the kitchen from afar. She lowered her eyes and pondered for a moment. Touching the things in her sleeves, a light flashed in her eyes, and she walked into the kitchen unhurriedly. Entering the kitchen, many servant girls bowed to her, and she nodded to them one by one. She walked into the inner room and saw Huang Yi standing by the stove looking at the fire. She smiled and walked up. So you're here. You made me look for you. Huang Yi saw her and smiled. I'm making soup. What are you looking for me for? Nothing much. Hasn't the weather been getting hotter recently? Old Madame Li wanted to ask if you needed some ice to make some desserts. She couldn't find you, so I came to find you to pass on a message for her. All right, I'll go find her later. Huang Yi gave her thanks. What soup are you making? It's strangely fragrant. Huang Yi asked curiously. Chicken soup. Little Princess Consort told me to make some nourishing soup for His Highness before she left. I saw that His Highness didn't eat much this morning, so I thought of making some. Huang Yi said with a smile. Huang Yi praised. Not bad, not bad. No wonder little Princess Consort likes you so much. At this time, someone called her from outside. Huang Yi hesitated. Huang Yi pushed her. Go take a look. I'll watch for you for a while. Come back early. Huang Yi smiled gratefully and went out. When Huang Yi saw that Huang Yi had left, she looked around and saw that there was no one around. She took out a small medicine bag from her sleeve and quickly picked up the lid. She sprinkled the medicine inside, and then quickly covered it again. Chapter 1102. Not long after she closed the lid, Huang Yi came back. What did I call you for? Huang Yi pretended not to know and asked. Nothing, it's just that the ingredients for today's cooking have arrived, so I went to check. Huang Yi waved her hand, then leaned over to look at the pot, then sat back down to add more firewood. Huang Yi nodded. At this time, a few more cooking maids came in, so she found an excuse to leave. When she came out of the kitchen, Huang Yi looked through the window and saw Huang Yi being entangled by those maids. She gave a low laugh, then left as if nothing had happened. Hugua Temple. At this time, a palace maid loudly announced, Miss Chu has arrived. The people inside had been waiting for her for a long time. When they heard this, everyone looked at the door in unison. A figure appeared. She was dressed in a thin scarlet robe with a Chinese rose embroidered on her collar. A belt of the same color was tied around her waist. She was dressed very elegantly and simply. However, in such a hot summer day, she gave off a very refreshing feeling. Moreover, she didn't seem to have any makeup on her face. She looked very natural, which made many of the women present endlessly envious. Qingyan greets Your Imperial Highness the Empress. Chu Qingyan walked to the center of the room and gracefully bowed to Empress Liang. Empress Liang indifferently raised her hand. Rise Luoyin, take a seat. Chu Qingyan did not expect this future mother-in-law who did not like her to give her a good look, so she happily found a seat at the back and sat down. However, sitting at the back did not mean that it would not attract attention. Your Imperial Highness, this Miss Chu is very beautiful, 1 in 100 great beauties. She and His Royal Highness are a perfect match. The wife of the Minister of Revenue, Madame Tang, said with a smile. Chu Qingyan heard this and couldn't help but look at her. She was wearing an emerald green dress, with a round figure and a round face. She looked very rich and peaceful, which made Chu Qingyan have a good impression of her. Who didn't like to hear good words? Empress Liang heard Madame Tang's praise and smiled. Madame Tang, don't praise her, otherwise this girl Qingyan's tail will rise to the sky. Chu Qingyan cooperated with a shy smile. And the other madams saw this and covered their mouths to laugh. On the side, Meng Shishu saw her appearance and felt jealous. The Liang sisters beside Empress Liang looked at each other, but did not say anything. However, from the moment she entered, Chu Qingyan still had not figured out why they were sitting here and chatting. Could it be the tea party after breakfast? At this time, a young girl sitting beside Madame Tang seemed to have been holding back for a long time. When no one spoke, she couldn't help but ask, Big Sister Chu, I met little sister Tianhua today. I saw that her makeup was very beautiful, and it didn't smudge even in this hot weather. After asking, I found out that you gave her some new products. I was very curious. Where did Big Sister Chu get those products from? Tell us about them and let us see. The young girl's face was like cream, and her voice was sweet and sweet. She was very charming and cute. Her expression was curious, and her eyes were as big as round jade. One could see the clarity in her eyes, which was pure curiosity and surprise. At this time, when the young girl finished speaking, everyone looked at her with curiosity. Chu Qingyan finally understood. So it was because of this. It seemed that the two models, Yu Tianhua, had played an unexpected role and attracted the attention of these rich madams. It was really like the saying, flowers don't bloom when you want to, but willows grow when you don't want them to. At this time, even Empress Liang looked at her and said, Qingyan, tell us. What products are you using? Why haven't we heard of them before? Chu Qingyan's mind lit up, and she did not hesitate. She turned around and said a few words to Jasper. Then, she stood up and said to everyone's expectant eyes. When Qingyan was in Lianqing, she saw people using these products and was very curious. After asking around, she found out that they were bought in Jiangnan. Then, she asked someone to buy them and tried them herself. She found that they were very effective. After explaining the reason, she began to explain the products in detail. When she talked about the effects of skincare, moisturizing, the eyes of the women present, whether it was Empress Liang, the Liang sisters, Meng Shishu, or the madams and young ladies who had seen the world, lit up. They couldn't wait to enjoy these products immediately. It sounds really good. It's the gospel for us women. Sometimes, on summer days like this, I don't even dare to wipe my sweat. I'm afraid that I'll accidentally become a dirty cat. Madame Jean, the minister of the Ministry of Works, sighed and was very distressed. Beside her, her daughter, Jean Yueqing, hugged her arm and shook it with a smile. Mother, don't worry. Didn't you hear what Sister Chu said? The boss of this continuation product is going to open a branch in the capital soon. When the time comes, I'll buy it for you. Madame Jean smiled and reached out to gently tap her younger daughter's nose. She laughed and said, Mother knows that you're filial. Chu Qingyan looked around and nodded in her heart. She had only talked about these skincare products, and they were already overjoyed. Wouldn't the makeup products she was going to talk about next make them go wild with joy? Sure enough, it was a woman's nature to love beauty. After everyone's heated discussion ended, Chu Qingyan continued to speak. In addition to these, they have many other products. For example, they can make people whiten their skin, cover the blemishes on their face, or make them look very good from the sun. As long as you use their products, even an extremely beautiful person will become extremely beautiful. Everyone was moved by her words. Some of them couldn't wait to own such products. Although Liang Dambing was also very tempted, she couldn't stand seeing Chu Qingyan receive everyone's attention. She couldn't help but mock. No matter how well you say it, it's still not as good as seeing it. What if it's not as good as you say? So Miss Chu, you'd better not be too full of yourself. Otherwise, you'll only be slapping your own mouth when the time comes. Although Liang Dambing's words were harsh, many people present expressed their agreement. It wasn't that they hadn't seen good things before. It was just that Liang Donbing's words were so miraculous that it felt like a fantasy story. However, there were some people who supported Chu Qingyan. The girl who first asked her about this topic, Tang Lanhan, said with a smile on her face, "I think that big sister Chu isn't exaggerating. If everyone has seen Tianyue, they'll know that she's like a different person after using big sister Chu's products." Although they couldn't confirm Chu Qingyan's words at this time, everyone still had expectations. Chu Qingyan didn't pay much attention to Liang Danbing. She was just a small character. Let her jump around. The more you pay attention to her, the happier she jumps. She felt that it was about time to raise their curiosity to the highest level. From the corner of her eye, she saw Jasper coming in with a box. She couldn't help but smile brightly. It was time to witness a miracle. Chapter 1103. When the crowd saw Jasper enter, they all looked at the box in her hands. If they remembered correctly, this person was Chu Qingyan's personal maidservant. Jasper stood beside her master and said in a low voice, "Master, I've brought the things." Chu Qingyan nodded, then turned to face the crowd. "These are the products that I mentioned earlier. I know that many of you don't believe me, but it's okay. I can give you a demonstration on the spot." As she spoke, she opened the lid of the box in Jasper's hands. There were several layers inside, and beautiful bottles and jars were displayed on each layer. They were like small handicrafts that were very attractive. The crowd was attracted by the small bottles, and they all looked at them in disbelief, because they were very different from what they usually used. Empress Liang, who was sitting at the head of the table, looked slightly surprised. She thought for a moment, then said to Chu Qingyan, "Today, tell everyone how to use these things." Chu Qingyan bowed in response, then looked around at the crowd and said with a smile, "Who wants to be a model?" Although everyone was eager to give it a try, in a situation where they were not confident, everyone looked at each other, and no one dared to take a step forward. At this time, Tang Lanhan stood up and said straightforwardly, "I'll do it." Chu Qingyan gave her a look of praise. "Okay. Mama, please help Qingyan move a chair." Empress Liang nodded to Luo Yun, and Luo Yun immediately instructed the palace maids to do so. After Tang Lanhan sat down in the middle of the crowd, Chu Qingyan took out the makeup remover and said to her with a smile, "Miss Tang, I have to remove the makeup on your face first. Otherwise, it will affect the effect of the next makeup." Tang Lanhan didn't care. "I'll listen to you. You don't have to ask for my opinion." Hearing her words, Chu Qingyan's impression of this straightforward young lady improved. Her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. "All right, since you trust me so much, I promise to give you a beautiful appearance." As she spoke, she poured the makeup remover onto a clean handkerchief and slowly wiped off the rouge on Tang Lanhan's face. Very quickly, a bare face appeared in front of everyone. Although there was no rouge on her face, her skin was still white and tender because of her youth. Chu Qingyan observed her face and realized that her eyes were not big enough. She had an idea of what was going on. She took a bottle of toner and patted it on Tang Lanhan's face while explaining to everyone, "We've cleaned up our faces just now. Now we're going to replenish the water we lost just now. It can also achieve the effect of shrinking the pores. Then, we're going to apply a layer of lotion to make our faces easier to put on makeup later." After applying the lotion, she continued to apply a layer of cream on Tang Lanhan's face. This is to nourish the skin. Because it's summer now, the sun is very strong. Sometimes when we go out for a walk or two, our face and neck will become two different colors. So we need to apply a layer of sunscreen next, which is to isolate the sun and dust so that our skin won't be polluted. Chu Qingyan explained every step to everyone, trying to translate the modern language into something they could understand. However, everyone was still stunned by these new words. Moreover, they found that every time she applied a layer of cream on Tang Lanhan's face, Tang Lanhan's skin would change. It became whiter and whiter, more and more delicate. They didn't dare to take a sip of tea and held their breaths, afraid that they would miss the details. What? Eyebrows can be drawn. Wow, it can actually change the color of lips. I thought it was only red usually. What's that? Just pinching her eyelashes and they become curled. Sighs and exclamations rang out one after another like curious babies. They couldn't help but stand up from their chairs and surround Chu Qingyan. They watched as Chu Qingyan turned Tang Lanhan into an exquisite and beautiful woman, as if she was performing a magic trick. Even Empress Liang, who had always been prejudiced against Chu Qingyan, was shocked at the skillful makeup skills of a craftsman. When Chu Qingyan entered the final step, no one dared to disturb her. They watched quietly. In fact, they had already begun to roar in their hearts, regretting that they didn't take the initiative just now. Otherwise, they would be the one who turned into a fairy now. After Chu Qingyan was done with Tang Lanhan's makeup, she took the mirror from Jasper and placed it in front of her. She smiled and said, "Now you can look at your face." When she heard everyone exclaim in surprise, Tang Lanhan couldn't help but want to take a look. However, her good upbringing made her endure. Now that she finally saw the effect, she couldn't wait to open her eyes. When she saw the person in the mirror, her eyes widened in shock. She said in disbelief, Is the person in there really me?" Chu Qingyan was amused by her cute reaction and nodded seriously. At this moment, Mrs. Tang also surrounded her and was overjoyed. "Daughter, it's really you." Then she turned to praise Chu Qingyan sincerely. "Miss Chu, your hands are really skillful." As soon as Mrs. Tang finished speaking, the people who gathered around nodded in agreement. Chu Qingyan smiled modestly. "Actually, it's all thanks to these products. I'm just skillful with my hands." Miss Chu is too modest. Tell us, her eyes weren't big before, but why did they become so much bigger at first glance? Jin Yueqing moved closer to Chu Qingyan and asked in amazement. Chu Qingyan smiled faintly. Although she wasn't wearing a brocade dress, she gave off an air of elegance and calmness. She looked at the confused crowd and patiently explained. "It's also thanks to our products, but the most important thing is the skill of applying makeup. Although Miss Tang's eyes aren't big, we can make them brighter through products. For example, we can modify her eyebrows to make them longer. Then we can use an eyelash clip to make her eyelashes curl. Then when we apply powder to her cheeks, we can use a little trick to modify the shape of her face to make it look smaller. This way, her eyes will stand out." Chu Qingyan spoke frankly with assurance, making everyone gasp in amazement. "What else can be changed? Tell us all about it." Empress Liang said quickly. Chu Qingyan bowed and accepted the order again. "Actually, when we're born, most of us aren't perfect. For example, some people feel that their eyebrows are too short or too thick, their lips are too light, their nose isn't straight enough, and so on. These can all be changed through these products. Moreover, it doesn't change our original appearance. Instead, we can modify our appearance to show our best side in front of our husband, family, and friends." Chu Qingyan's words made the eyes of the women present light up. Chapter 1104. Also, with the passage of time, once we get older, our skin will become saggy and dark yellow. Wrinkles will appear at the corners of our eyes, showing signs of aging. It can protect our skin to a certain extent, moisturize, whiten, and change its luster. As soon as Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she felt the wild joy of the crowd. She laughed in her heart and continued. "However, just using these products can only treat the symptoms and not the root cause. Although it's because after removing the makeup, we still look the same as before, we also have to put in more effort in eating. In fact, there's a lot of nourishing the body and changing our mental appearance through eating." Many of the women present were already 30 or 40 years old. Not only did they have to serve their high-ranking husbands, but they also had to take care of all the big and small matters in the manor. It was very tiring. In addition, in ancient times, it was very common for men to have one wife and many concubines. Not only did the first wife have to fight for concubines, but she also had to guard against those servant girls with bad intentions. Time and energy were spent on this, so no matter how much powder was used, it couldn't hide the vicissitudes of life. Unlike those vixens who were only responsible for looking beautiful like flowers. So after hearing Chu Qingyan's words, the thoughts of wanting to catch their husbands in the past came back in a whirlwind at this moment. Chu Qingyan felt the wolf-like gazes from all directions, and a few black lines slid down her forehead. However, she felt very happy in her heart because the effect was unexpectedly good. However, she still had a plan in her heart. These words of experience couldn't be said too much. She had to hold back some, so that she could be popular in the circle of noble women in the future. Do you have any good food therapy methods? Tell us about them. At this time, Meng Shirshu was fascinated by the words and couldn't help but blurt out. After she finished speaking, she couldn't help but want to bite off her tongue. Chu Qingyan didn't pay attention to her. Instead, she took out some unopened products from the box and selectively gave them to the people around her. This, madam, the shape of your lips is very beautiful, but it's a little dry. Take this bottle of lip balm and try it. This young miss has thick eyebrows and big eyes, but the shape of your eyebrows can be slightly trimmed. Take this eyebrow shaver and try it. After walking around, basically everyone had received a product that was suitable for them. Even the Liang sisters and Meng Shirshu had received a set. Everyone was overjoyed and wished they could go back and try it in front of the mirror right now. However, they had good manners and didn't forget to thank Chu Qingyan. Although they knew that gifts blind the eyes, they couldn't refuse such a rare product. At the same time, they flattered Empress Liang eagerly. With such a capable and intelligent future daughter-in-law, when they were almost done talking, they immediately left in a hurry. After leaving, Empress Liang still had a complacent smile on her face. After the room returned to silence, Empress Liang looked at Chu Qingyan, who was still standing in place, and asked with an unpleasant expression, "Why haven't you left yet?" "Nyang Nyang, Qingyan has a small gift that she wanted to give you, but she never found the right time. Now is the perfect time to give it to you." She smiled pleasingly. What gift? After seeing her amazing makeup skills, Empress Liang suddenly had a strong interest in what she wanted to give. Chu Qingyan smiled but didn't say anything. She turned around and took a box the size of 2 palms that Jasper handed over. She took 2 steps forward and placed it in front of Empress Liang. Empress Liang didn't have Luoyin take it. She glanced at Chu Qingyan and then personally reached out to open it. When the items inside were all reflected in her eyes, Empress Liang revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. This is? That's right. These are all the products that Qingyan used for Miss Tang's makeup earlier. There are also some products with different effects that haven't been used yet. None of them have been opened. Before coming to the temple, Qingyan had already carefully selected a set for you. Is it to Nyang Nyang's liking? She lowered her eyes and pretended to be very nervous. How could Empress Liang not like it? As soon as she saw Tang Lanhan's makeup, she wanted to immediately send someone back to the capital to buy some to try. At this time, Chu Qingyan's gift was like handing a pillow to a sleepy person, or a delicious meal to a hungry person. What a good child. Empress Liang reached out to gently pat Chu Qingyan's hand. She revealed a rare amiable expression. She was used to Empress Liang's aloof appearance, so she suddenly became amiable to her. Moreover, she usually didn't have a kind expression. Even if she was a bit gentle, it looked strange. Chu Qingyan felt a bit scared, but she didn't show it on her face. These are all things that Qingyan should do. It's fine as long as Nyang Nyang likes it. If only Su, or had some of your filial piety. Empress Liang sighed softly, but her expression was somewhat sincere. Chu Qingyan hurriedly said, "Actually, His Highness is also very concerned about Nyang Nyang. It's just that men aren't as meticulous as women, and don't easily express their feelings. Therefore, I ask that Nyang Nyang doesn't bicker with His Highness." When Empress Liang heard this, she felt much better. At this time, she saw that Empress Liang was unable to take her eyes off the bottles and jars. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. She felt that this was an opportunity and couldn't help but boldly say, "Nyang Nyang, Qingyan has something to thank you for." "What is it?" Empress Liang casually asked. "Qingyan and His Highness came to the capital and left my parents in a foreign land. I missed them very much. Later on, I heard that Nyang Nyang brought my parents to the capital. Qingyan is very grateful." Chu Qingyan said carefully. Empress Liang's hand that was stroking the bottle paused. Emotions swirled in her eyes. It seemed that she had underestimated this girl. There's no need to be so polite. Once you marry into the family, your parents, must also treat them well. Chu Qingyan repeatedly agreed. Then she gathered her courage and asked, Then Nyang, when my parents come to the capital, can they be brought to the King of England's residence? Empress Liang sneered inwardly. She even learned to bargain with her. Her lips curved slightly, but she avoided the topic. Didn't you put on Miss Tang's makeup earlier? Now that the products are all here, you should also try on this consort's makeup and see if it's as magical as it seems. When Empress Liang didn't respond, Chu Qingyan was a bit disappointed. However, she had no choice but to force herself to respond. All right, Qingyan will put on Nyang's makeup right now. She turned the box around and earnestly put on Empress Liang's makeup. Because she had observed Empress Liang's skin and facial features from the beginning, and because she was skilled, she quickly put on a makeup that suited Empress Liang very well. Not only did Empress Liang look graceful and luxurious, but she also looked a few years younger, like an unmarried young lady. Empress Liang was unwilling to let go of the mirror. Her fingers stroked her cheeks. It was as if she was looking at her budding self from 20 years ago. Seeing that she was no longer needed, Chu Qingyan packed up the box and prepared to leave. Wait! Empress Liang put down the mirror and suddenly called out to her. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up slightly. Could it be that there was a chance of what happened just now? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.